Unfortunately, we weren't, I only found out that the rabbi is coming last week, like on Friday actually. I found Thursday, Friday.
My fault.
I wasn't really prepared. Bezrat Hashem, next time when the Rosenberg will come, we'll be more prepared and we'll be able to advertise it, they say, Hebrew Kamosha Tzarech. First of all, anybody's familiar with the Rosenberg? The Rosenberg is at the forefront, on the front lines, fighting pedophilia within the frum community.
Can you hear me?
I don't know if people know about what's going on here in Ramat Beit Shemesh, but I can attest to the different things that are going on here in Ramat Beit Shemesh. I'm working from Again, volunteering from Again. I can tell you what's going on here is not good. People don't want to talk about it. People want to sweep it under the rug. People want to go to their rabbi and say, Rabbi, it doesn't exist. The rabbi wants to say, okay, it doesn't exist. How much do you want to give me? There's a very, very big problem, and Rosenberg has taken a lot of flack for it. He's gone all over the world speaking about this and creating awareness for what's going on. It's not just telling people what to do, but it's actually telling people what we should really, really be doing. Not just be looking for it, but actually how do you protect your children, what schools you should send your children to, and and look for the different signs of what's going on with your children and what's going on with your neighborhood, with your neighbors. One more thing, it's not the first time Rosenberg has been here. He's been here before. And Baruch Hashem, Magen is now working with Rabbi Rosenberg, and we hope to in the future form some kind of international where we can know what's going on with all these people coming from America, coming from Canada, and basically they would like to erase their pasts and come here and think like, you know, they're beyond reproach here. And unfortunately we have people here in the neighborhood here that have come from Florida and have taken advantage of the situation. And are living here in Ramat Beit Shemesh. So, without further ado, I'd like to present the rabbi to speak.
Thank you very much.
Let me make a word. I'm sorry.
I'm going to talk about pedophilia. It's a subject which we never spoke about for the past 6 years. It was all under the carpet. It never happened. When I came out at first, the hotline, everybody said it's a lie, it's his imagination. I'm struggling myself. At that time I went to school to learn a profession. So I told him, but you know, if the coffee needs a little more milk and you don't have it, or you finish the coffee and you want a little cake, you can come into my house just, you know, for a hello, goodbye. So I made friends with the neighbor. Little did I know who he is. Approximately almost a year passed by, and he comes into my house, and he says to me, it was an evening, it was 7 o'clock, and it was in a hot July day. And you know, the Nissa in America is that we live in Perishas for 2 months. You know, if the government would give a decree that we have to leave our wives in the mountains all week and we live our home alone all week, we would probably be goys atanas, and we would, you know, do everything possible to stop that decree. But fortunately or unfortunately, by us in the States, we made this ourselves and we lived with it for years. So what happens is that in the summer months, the wife is being parked in the Catskill Mountains. The husband is being parked in Williamsburg or in Borough Park. They don't meet each other 5 days a week. And he goes out Friday afternoon and he comes back Sunday afternoon. So this young man, his wife was very learned. She was from Israel. They took her to one of the biggest and the best camps that there is. And she was supposed to be the camp mother. So he's alone. And his wife is up in the country. 7 o'clock in the afternoon in a hot July, he knocks on my door. He says, Rabbi, can I come in? Well, he said, Mister. At that time I was, you know, Mister. He says, can I come in? I said, by all means, sit right down. He says, what do you need, a little cake or a little milk in the coffee? He says, no, I need neither of them. I want to share a story with you. You see, I was born in Williamsburg. What happened was that a teacher, a Malamed, he told me Rich Cheder, the frumest of the frumest that there is, he molested me. Why? Because I was an orphan. We will talk later on who are the most vulnerable children. You'll find out it's orphans. So the teacher, the Malamed, said to my mother, you know, your son has a very, very weak understanding in the Gemara, and I have to teach him private. I will do this at my own expense. I will not take any money from you. And you can send him 6 o'clock every morning. Yeshiva starts the davening 7:30, so between 6 and 7, I will have a chance to teach him private. Which sounds to be the most excellent deal that there is. In fact, it's unrefusable because he was a mother that was left a widow from her husband, and she has a house full of kids. So the Rebbe unfortunately said, before we're going to learn, we have to be holy. So he took him to the mikveh every day, molested him, did the worst of the worst, which I don't even want to go in now, because then it would be getting carried away from the idea. He did everything that you could think of. After 3 months, when he finally, you know, it takes a few months until you get fed up with it. So he said to the mother of the boy, listen, I've tried very hard with your son, but it just doesn't seem that it's working out, and therefore I want him out of the class. Not only doesn't he want to learn with him private, but he wants him out of the school. The boy went off the derech, like all these thousands of children go off the derech, especially when the mother is a widow. And he was very, very, very low already. He was, it's not important at this point. At the end of the day, he had an uncle who was a very, very established man in Chinuch in Williamsburg. In fact, he runs one of the biggest girls' schools that there is. And that's his father's, Oliver Shalom's brother. And he was alive, and he said to him, what happened to you? So at that time, nobody spoke about this. But anyway, the story was that instead of going to psychiatry and finding out the root of the problem, you know, we have a lot of ways how we do things on our own. Like if I keep on teaching everybody what's going on in the Jewish community, they ostracize me. So that's an easy way out, so nobody's going to speak about it. So his uncle said, you know, everybody that has a problem, what do? We made them off. A shidduch is basically, in our dictionary, the solution for all the problems. So he goes to Eretz Yisrael and finds himself a very poor girl, and the man said, I will pay you everything, lock, stock, and barrel, a house, everything. So the poor father sells his daughter on the market. But at the end of the day, he said, I very much like to, you know, do the shidduch, but I have a problem. I have an older son before that girl. So he says, don't make an issue out of it. I'll give you 2 diras, one for your older son and one for this girl, but we made them off. It cost him then $100,000. This goes back 40 years ago. So we have solutions to everything. All problems have an easy solution. So after a year or two, they went to the States, and he came back to where he, you know, started off in Williamsburg. He rented that apartment where, you know, a floor beneath me. And this very same Maggid Shir, or Rebbe, whatever you want to call him, knocks in his house 6 o'clock in the afternoon. He says, open the door. So he figured that this man is coming to apologize now for all the damage he had done to him. He didn't have any children because he was afraid to have children. Because this is one of the things that happens when these people will talk about it. They get so messed up, they're afraid to have children. So he lived with a woman 2.5 years without even wanting to have children. Anyway, the Maggid Shir tells him, now I want to do this and this with you. Again, I don't want to say it, you know, very graphically. So he says, what are you, crazy? I thought you came to apologize. You messed up my life. You messed up everything about me. He says, listen, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to tell your wife who you are and what you were, and she'll divorce you. This is a So he had no choice, and he had to do what the Maggid Shir told him to do. So this is a shame, right? This was 6 o'clock in the afternoon. 7 o'clock, he knocks into my door, and he shares the story with me. And then I tell him, you know, whatever his name was, it's irrelevant. I said, yeah, I can say his name. His name is Avrum Bear. I said, you want to know something, Avrum Bear? What do you do for a living? He says, I drive a truck. I said, you know, if you would stop that truck driving and you would just get yourself a writer and you would print fairy tale books, they would be the best sellers that there is on the market. You can make, on commissions alone, on royalties, millions of dollars a year. He says, you put together stories like, it's unbelievable. So he says to me, listen, Rabbi Rosenberg, you mean to say you don't believe me a word I'm saying? And I says, yes, I don't believe you a word you're saying. This is a beautiful fairy tale. He says, okay, if you don't believe me, then I have nobody to talk to. Then that's finished. Walks out of my house, takes a car, goes down to Leviton, Long Island. Over there, those days, they used to have a lot of hunting, and you were able to buy a rifle with no license. You just bought it for hunting. He buys a rifle, he puts it here, and he kills himself in the car. He left a note behind of this whole story. And he was finished. About 2 o'clock at night, the police rang at my door. Open the door. I said, what is this? He says, we're the police from Leviton, Long Island. I said, listen, it's 2 o'clock at night. You have no business, banging on my door. He says, well, if you want to come in, there's one way I can let you in, because anybody can say I'm the police. They say, first look outside, the car has, we have a marked vehicle. I said, I don't care. You go over to the 90th precinct, which is in my community. You tell them to send a marked car with an officer, and they should tell me who they're sending with this badge number, and then I will open the door. Okay, so he does it, comes back 15 minutes with the police officer. And he says, tell me, do you know somebody, Mr. Berkowitz? I said, for that you are a police officer. You don't see on my door it says Rosenberg. Did you make a mistake between Rosenberg and Berkowitz? I said, what's with you? He says, no, we didn't make a mistake. We found him shot in the head, and we would like to know a little about him because we took his license, and it says 269 Rutledge Street, which is this house. And I said, oh my God, he shot himself? He says, yes, he left a Hebrew note behind as well. I said, if that's the case, you have to go to check out because you're not supposed to leave a nifter unattended either. So I tell my landlord, we have a case here, it's a neighbor, we have to go see. So in the car, they didn't touch the note because they weren't supposed to touch it, probably for fingerprinting purposes. It said there, very simple, I was an orphan, I was molested, I couldn't put my life together, and before anything, listen, this is what he did. He left that note behind. At his funeral, his uncle said, the eulogy, he went like this, he says, only Hashem knows that this shirt is not mine. I borrowed every penny to marry this boy off. And what happened? And guess what? Nobody figured it out. Nobody put connections between molesting and suicide. It was those days that nothing had, first of all, it never happened. And then even if it did happen, what does it have to do with blowing your brains out? Because of this story, when I got older with 30 years, and I started to hear what's happening in the community, I put this piece in place. And I feel very bad. I mean, I had nothing to do with it. Basically, I wasn't learned at that time, but it still came through my door. And this is like a message from Hashem that you have to do something. And this is how it all started. Now, what happened was the children used to come to me, and they would tell me what the teachers would do to them, the rabbis. It was unbelievable. We also saw that we have thousands of children, teens, who are going to drugs. And then we had thousands of children that went off the derech. And then we had hundreds of children that committed suicide. There was a suicide every week in the Jewish community, either a boy or a girl. It was unbelievable what really is happening. Anyway, slowly but surely, I started to ask these children exactly what's happening. And then we started to realize that it is happening. So the question is, number one, is the first question that I always begin with. Is it true or not? If it's not true, in Williamsburg they say I have a big mind, the power of imagination, and I hallucinate. It's not happening. Every rabbi is holy, every teacher is holy. It's not happening. It took a little time until finally it started to come out in the street that it is happening. Who are the ones that really helped us to make sure that it comes out in the street that it's happening? All these boys that left the community, which had no fear to talk anymore, they weren't afraid to be ostracized, thrown out of school, they weren't afraid of anything. They left. They don't even want to turn back. So these were the people who started coming out. Yes, I was a child, this and this teacher, they're pointing now at teachers and everything. So now it's happening. Now let's go in a little into what's happening. As I explained in all my lectures, there are basically 4 different kinds of child abuse. One is physical abuse. Physical abuse, you can see. Every child that comes in the Smedrish, you can see is going to be smacked up. Now, on my hotline, before Pashas Vaychi and before Pashas Mishpotim, I say to all the women, I want you to know, if your son comes home clobbered, red cheeks, a swollen fronts, the forehead, don't be afraid. There are 2 Parshas in Chumash that's the worst for the children. One is Vaychi, because you have to know the song, Vaychi Yank, the whole thing. That's why I put on my hotline a beautiful tape every year so that the parents should also listen to it. And it's so sweet. It was done by a Rebbe here. And the children love it. So when they come home, at least they're not smacked up. The other one is Mishputim. I have on one of the hotlines for Mishputim because it's Shomer Chinim, Shomer Sucher. Now most of these Malamdim have a tendency that if they don't get the paycheck, so they get angry. Of course, they have to pay payments. So who suffers for this? The children. 9 out of 10 of these Malamdim in the ultra-Orthodox Talmud Torahs and even in the Orthodox Talmud Torahs are not trained b'chlal in chinuch how to give over to a child. So the way they were brought up, boom, they give it back. I remember my Rebbe, if I didn't know the place, boom. So when I finally got married and I was out of the concentration camp, I said to him, Rebbe, I want to ask you a question, a personal question. When I didn't know the place and you slapped me, what did you think? That day I would still be learning? He says, now that you're asking me, I'm thinking maybe you would. I said, did you think that that week I would learn? He said, I don't know. I told him, no. Not that week, and not that month, and not that year, and nothing that has to do with you, because there was an anger. There was no reason why you hit me. Okay, the second one is psychological and emotional abuse. This is very, very important because a child needs a lot of support, and if he doesn't get enough psychological and emotional courage, then he has a problem because the teachers have their way to do it, children and the monks themselves have the way to do it, to just run you down. The third thing is neglect of children. You can see a lot of times children are so neglected, they come in cheder, they don't look good, they don't smell good. That's neglect. That's a part of child abuse. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk now about the fourth one, which is the mainstream, and it's called child sexual abuse. unfortunately, when children used to come to me and used to tell me they were abused, I used to listen to them, but in the back of my mind, I felt that they were just being slapped by the teacher, you know, just like we grew up. But then I started to say, there's something more to it, and I would say to the boy, explain to me very explicitly what happened. And he would say, listen, 6 o'clock, when the school stops, the cheder, it was dark outside in the winter, and the Rebbe would tell this boy, you have to stay here, you're not doing too well in your grades, I want to talk to you. He would close the lights, and he would molest them. And it just didn't make sense. I mean, you're talking about a cheder. But anyway, this is what happened. So, when I heard these stories, what I did is, I was a very known asken. I used to do mikvahs all over, and I still do. But, you know, this is a field which I didn't have too much knowledge. So what I did is, I wrote letters to the Rabbonim. 5 years. Every week, just like Shabbos comes, before Shabbos, a letter went out to over 650 Rabbonim. Talking about New York, Williamsburg Borough Park, Flatbush, and Muncie, Monroe, Lakewood, all the big Jewish communities, up to London and to Eretz Yisrael. Here to Daitach also. The letter would say, this and this person came and told me this and this is the victim, the name of him, and this is the name of the pedophile. Something has to be done. Okay? 5 full years go by. It cost thousands of dollars, you know, the typesetting, the mailing, everything. Till one beautiful rabbi calls me up and he says, Rabbi Rosenberg, stop wasting your money. We know exactly what's going on. We know much more than you think. You don't even know 5% of what's really going on. And I said to him, so how can you sit cold-blooded and see how the generation is falling apart? So the rabbi says to me, very simple. There are 2 main factors. Number 1 is money. We make millions of dollars on sexual abuse. And I said, how do you make money on sexual abuse? He says, very simple. The United States government pumps in millions of dollars in every community to teach the children about their sexual growth, you know, the growth of the body and everything. And after that, if need be, they give condoms in every public school. The first thing you walk in, you see boxes of condoms. We, the rabbis, don't want that. So we tell the government, look what a clean community we have. It's costing us a lot of manpower, people teaching these children. It's costing us so much of our time and everything. So the money that you're spending for the public schools, for billboards, and for condoms, and every public school has what they call, one of the people, his name is a counselor. He's a legal counselor. If he sees anything or anybody complains to him, he has to go right away and take action. And if not, he can go to jail. We don't have this in yeshivas and in private schools. So that money belongs to the rabbis. So they give us millions and millions of dollars. We don't want it to come out that we have the same community as the Catholic Church. We don't want it. Plus, he says, we also have a way to make a living. If somebody complains that this and this man molested my child in the mikveh, we call the man, we sit him down, so listen, you molested the child, right? $100,000 or you go to jail. The man is more than happy to give the $100,000. You know why? Very simple. A lawyer in such a serious thing is before you kiss his mezuzah, it's $500,000. He doesn't even sit with you less than that. Then it's plus. And then it's in all the newspapers. At the end of the day, even if you go free, you were still once a person that, you know, was in jail, or at least you are under arrest. So he figures, you know what, $100,000, no problem. Now the question is, how can the Rabbanan close the deal? It shouldn't leak out. Very simple. They tell the father, if one word is heard from you, we're going to ostracize you. We're going to throw you out from the community. We're going to throw you out from every shul that there is. I'm going to give you an idea so you understand what they do. This is flyers that went around for 6 weeks every day. Millions of flyers. This is against me because I talk about pedophilia. So it says here they should chop off my head. If you look close, that's my head, and it's a snake, they should chop off my head. So you can imagine how I was able to live in a community, right? You can imagine what they did to my children. And
This was in America that they did it in Hebrew?
this is in Williamsburg.
In Hebrew they did
Yeah.
Well, it's Yiddish.
What does it mean?
It means that anybody should get himself a big mitzvah to chop off my head. That would be the best thing that they can do for Judaism. There were two of them. There was another one also. This one was the second one. Then, without telling me anything, they sat together, 38 rabbis, and they put out a big chiyuv. And I'm not allowed to go into any shul and to any mikveh. And nobody should stand in my daled amos, nobody should talk to me. This is the community that I have to live in. Now, normally, I can move away. I'm not meshibet to be in Williamsburg. But the people who were helping me said that if you leave, then the pedophiles, not only will they become back strong, they will even become stronger. So we have to make sure that they're going to be put down. Their power was that the district attorney, who was Mr. Charles Hines, backed them because he got money from them. One of the Mishmei Satznis told me when I started the war, don't start with us, because Mr. Charles Hines is on our payroll. I said, what? I thought the man works for the government. He says, yeah, but we give him money too. Now this thing, I made the sign for $2 worth. I made the sign. I kept on going in front of his office, told the television, saying, why are all the Jewish pedophiles being freed? Is it because of the dollars that Mr. Charles Hines gets? Now in the beginning it looked to be a stupid sign, and I just wasted my time going, and they got the televisions and everything. But after 2 years, there came out so much junk and dirt on this man that he finally, he fell out of the race. He lost about 2-3 weeks ago, more 4 or 5 weeks ago, he lost 75 to 25. And we pushed somebody, his name is Mr. Thompson, and we told him what's going on, and he was very, very, boiled up from such things that happened. So when he gave his speech, when he won 75 to 25, he comes over to me in front of everybody. He gives me a kiss on my forehead. He says, Rabbi, I promise you the children will be safe. This is a whole blow in the whole Brooklyn, because we threw out the person that was 21 years in his district attorney's chair. And they say in 100 years it never happened that a running DA should be defeated, especially 75 to 25. So anyway, these rabbis knew how to do this. Now, this is the first thing that they do. They know, and they don't want to do anything, is because of money. The second thing, they always told me, we have to deny everything, because otherwise it's an embarrassment that in 50 years we didn't do anything. And yet, I'm working 6 or 7 years with a hotline, with everything. You know what the accomplishments is? It's unbelievable. There's maybe 20 arrests. One person got 103 years. The other person got 30 years. The other person got 28 years. There is so many arrests. And now, we also went to the government. I went with people, and I said I want that they should have a Magal Sagur in every school. That means a circuit television. And the Satmar people are good, that they were fighting. No, we don't need it, because they didn't want. You know what the rabbis used to do? they had a glass on the window, a window glass on the door, so they would put a piece of tissue, and they would tape it on there, and then they can do whatever they want. Now, they can't do it if you have a Magal Sagur. So it was a fight like unbelievable. Then Hashem gave me a thought, and he said, why didn't you tell him we're afraid the Arabs shouldn't come into the schools? Oh, then they said, you know what? If that's the case, you got to go to Homeland Security. Homeland Security is like an FBI, but you know, it's made to be borders. It didn't take 15 minutes, and it was stamped that every school has to have it. If they don't have it, they close it down. And the United States government is paying for every school. At one time, they sent me a piece of paper saying that we spent over $100 million for New York City and state schools and synagogues alone. $100 million for New York State. Whatever the other figures is, I wouldn't even want to figure out. Now this is very important here too. I came here a few times to tell people that you need the same thing here. You need this in Israel. I was speaking once to one of the assistants of the, I don't remember who, the school, and he said that it's a good idea, they'll try it out. Then I read in the newspaper that he said that not only does it help against child abuse, it also helps that in the yard a lot of bullying is stopped, graffitis is stopped, and also a lot of people come next to school selling the boys drugs, and that's all stopped. And it's a very, very important thing. So this is very important. Now, that's one of the things we accomplished. We accomplished a lot of other things. We accomplished that all the drivers, the bus drivers, have to be fingerprinted by the FBI, and they have to swear or affirm that they never touched a child. Now, if any child would say, this man ever touched me, he goes to jail, not because he touched the child, way before, because he wrote a lie, he signed on a lie, which is 20 years. So the Malamdim are fighting us very badly. Very badly. We want the Malamdim also should be fingerprinted, because I claim to the government, a yeshiva is just like a public school. We learn different things, but why shouldn't our teachers be on the same level? And now they're fighting us again and again back and forth, but it looks like the law is going to pass through. Probably by next year, 2014, all the teachers will have to be fingerprinted. And they have to swear that they never touched a child. So these are the things that we're doing slowly but surely. Now, let's get back to the rabbis. The first thing they said is the money, right? What's the second thing? They say that Rabbi Rosenberg, in less than 6 years, turned the whole world over. And we couldn't do this in 50 years, so there was a big embarrassment. And because of the embarrassment, they knew it's going to happen. So because of the embarrassment, they'd rather say that it's not true. And we're going to ostracize Rabbi Rosenberg. And then, you know, they can do whatever they want. So this is one of the very important things that I started in the beginning, and it worked pretty good. Now, we're going to go in, the fact that we are convinced that it's happening, we're going to go in a little what kind of pain this is. It says in Pasuk, in Pashas Kisaitzai, Ki kasher yokum uish al rayai v'rotzko nafesh, if you abuse a child, you rape a child, molested a child, it's not like you smacked him and in a day or two he'll forget the pain. No way. If you did it to a child, is kikasher yakum ishal rayai v'rotzcha nufesh, that means you killed him. Molesting a child is killing a child. In fact, I always say that killing is not even as bad. It's not even as bad. We all heard the story, what happened in Borough Park with a very special boy. His name was Leibel Kaletsky. We all heard him of the story. According to reports, he was molested, and because they didn't want it to come out, they killed him. And that's a typical thing that these molesters do sometimes. They kill him. There was a girl in Bnei Brak, and the reports say that on Yom Kippur in the 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, a 4-year-old girl went to daven, and she was dragged into a mikveh. Mikvehs don't work on Yom Kippur. And she was molested. And then she was hit in the head 4 times. That's what I read in the reports. And because they shouldn't suspect that somebody raped her and then they killed her, they took her into a Kalim mikveh, turned her upside down and drowned her. So the theory would have had to be that she got up to look into the mikveh and she fell in. But no, today there's an autopsy, there's everything. I mean, they can almost 99% to verify everything that happened. So what happened at the end of the story with this girl? Guess what? Nobody knows. You want to know something? Looks like nobody cares. Because otherwise there should be a protest in front of the police. Now when this thing happened, I said on my hotline, I'm not in Israel, but I'll give you my speculation. They probably know that a rabbi did it or an Orthodox man did it, and he probably went to the rabbis, and the rabbis are putting it under the carpet. So how do I know? Why should I think that way? Because I read on the internet that the rabbi said that the levaya has to be Motzi Yom Kippur. Now why in the world does a levaya have to be Motzi Yom Kippur if a girl has to be investigated, the reason of death? I said, once the rabbis are involved, we have a problem. And guess what? We're past Hanukkah. Did you ever hear about this child? No. Who cares? As long as the rabbis have the reins in their hand, they do what they want. And they're going to try to keep their authority and their dignity clean.
But wasn't there a police investigation?
Excuse me?
But there was a police investigation.
Yeah, but you know, they said that Motzei Shabbos, the Motzei Yom Tov, it has to be the Levaya right away, so...
So they got their way?
And listen, you tell me what happened.
I don't know.
Well, the story is a true story because...
You're right, I haven't heard anything since. I read about the story.
You're never going to hear.
Right.
I bet you know what? I'll give you $1,000, you give me a penny. Make a bet now. You're never going to hear about it.
They always manage to stop autopsies.
What?
They always manage to stop autopsies.
Okay, so...
Always.
But even if it's something that you have to verify what and where and when? Okay. Next. So, the first thing is that the pain never goes away. If somebody's molested, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, you know there are old women now in nursing homes that are giving out their stories, what happened 70 and 80 years ago. Now there's a very big research on the subject because the world didn't know too much about it. And it's unbelievable. There's the White Institution, that's the ones that teach psychologists and psychiatrists. There's so many booklets that I can read almost every day, new things, how these people are opening. Unbelievable. It never goes away today. Okay. The second thing is, it destroys your brain. It destroys it. There's so many explanations why, but we're not going to get into it. It destroys your brain, it destroys your way of thinking. The third thing is, it damages the amunah, the faith. First of all, because it does, you know, and das, it does a damage. Ve'menoschu b'alaylos amunah is truly in how the taharas alaylos. Second of all, it's very simple too. For all these boys claim that every taught me Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, he taught me Kedoshim Tihi, and then when he couldn't hold back his tava, he would molest the boys. So if he doesn't believe in Kedoshim Tihi, I mean, that's what he taught us. So wait a minute, where are we now? I don't want to repeat the rest of what they say. They look at the teacher or the Rebbe as a ritual director, as somebody who they look up to, a man that, you know, knows and he does and he practices religion and everything. And all of a sudden, this very special man that he looks up to, he molested him. So there's no more trust anymore. Then the fourth thing, that's the third thing. The fourth thing is that these people, their trust is damaged. Even in business, in everything, they cannot live a functional life because everything is by them so messed up now. The fifth thing is that the pain is so strong that if you don't talk about it, or if you eat it in yourself, it runs you to very bad things, either to drugs or to suicide. They say abused children either become drug addicts, suicide, or they become abusers. And this is a very bad damage. We're going to talk later on that in the Cheder, we're not only talking about the rabbis, we're going to talk about in Cheder. There are so many children who are damaged. They were damaged in mikvahs and in other places. And they in turn around now and they damage the whole class.
Like Coco.
Coco claims that he was molested. We have other cases now. Just a second, I want to take a little more. We have other cases now. We have a case of Rabbi Leibowitz, who got 32 years in prison. And before they sentenced him, they say to everybody, you can say something if you want. He gets up and he says, I was an orphan, and my mother sent me to London to my uncle, and he's a big rabbi there. He molested me on a daily basis. And I called up my mother, and I couldn't explain it to her because, you know, a son to a mother can't talk like that. He says, Mommy, take me home. I'm full of tumor here. And his mother couldn't understand. She just meant that in London the streets are worse than in New York. And now he became a molester, and he molested hundreds, in fact, thousands of children that we know. And now he wound up in jail. And this is very bad news. And that's why I say to all the people, you have to talk to your children. They claim they ostracize me because I'm making the children aware. No, no, no. If I won't make him aware, somebody else will make him aware. But he will show him what to do, and that's wrong. So these are basically the few things. They become abusers, drug addicts, suicide, and then there's the mainstream. They usually are runaway children. We have runaway children in the tens of thousands. We use the Borough Park in Flatbush. It's unbelievable. I have a friend who lives in Florida. He goes to shul one Pesach morning, and he sees people walking, maybe 7, 8 boys, and they're talking a Hamish Yiddish. And he goes over to them and he says, where do you eat Pesach? I mean, he says, right here in McDonald's. And he talks to them, he shares a word for a word. One is from Williamsburg, two from Borough Park, one from New Square. And he says, what happened to you people? He says, what do you mean what happened to me? All the rabbis used to do what they shouldn't be doing, and we finally got fed up of that and we ran away. Pesach, they go into McDonald's. It's unbelievable. One of the people who runs a show, it's called Arnava, he claims that he has 3,500 children every month visiting he has like a facility for, you know, playing and everything for runaway children. He has 3,500 children in Borough Park or in Flatbush. You know what the number that is? Rabbi Malstein, yes. If you go on my website, you can hear his speech that he just said in Aguda. You heard it? On 70. I put it on.
I heard it video.
It's unbelievable. He opened everybody's eyes out. And I don't want to tell you, he does a good job because he has 3,500 children. I have to tell you, in Williamsburg, we also have 3,500 children that ran away, but you know the problem? We never got them together yet. We need a Rabbi Wallenstein in Williamsburg, and we need one in Borough Park, and we need one in Lakewood to get these people together. Can you imagine a coincidence? I'll share with you a very short coincidence. There's a girl, Debbie. She just, about a month ago, she committed suicide. And there's a Mr. Weiss, who was her boyfriend, or maybe they were married, I don't know, and he came to the funeral. And guess what? This Mr. Weiss was molested in New Square from a teacher. So he went away to New Jersey, someplace in no man's land, where there's not even a shul in 10, 15 miles around. At the same time, this Debbie, she also went out because her uncle, who was one of the most mechibedike people in New Square, molested her when she was 16 or 17. The father didn't want to believe it because that was his brother. So the brother says, if I have nobody to talk to, I go away. She also went away where there's no Jewish people, nothing. And they somehow went out. And one didn't know about the other, that they're both from the same village, New Square, and they're both unfortunately molested. After a few weeks, they opened up one to another, and she told them, this is my story. And he said, this is my story. Then she became so aggravated that she went to a doctor that she needs a little, pills to calm down. She got, I think, phenobarbital or something. She took 200 pills, and she took liquor, and she killed herself. And this Mr. Weiss came to the funeral, and he said, people, wake up, what's happening here? We're two people in a different strange planet in New Jersey down south. We met, and by heavenly coincidence, we belonged to the same school, in the same, by Skinner, and we were both molested, and this is what we wound up to be, non-Jewish.
Well, there's a video that went out with like Talbot from California.
Yeah,
Very close to Talbot, and
Yeah.
he goes to Uman, and he gives a speech about this in Uman also,
right.
about what's going on. And he said, they asked him a question, they said, well, you're not allowed to go and say Lashon Hara about this one or that one. So he said, what are you talking about? Somebody's trying to kill you, you're not allowed to kill him?
Of course.
That's the thing of the Torah.
Of course. Okay, now let's continue. There's another big problem that most of these people cannot have relations with their wife, or the women can't have relations with their husband. As soon as they get close, they start remembering these bad memories, and it stops them. I have somebody who I sent to a doctor. He lived with the wife 6 years. Every time they had to, get together, he told her, listen, I can't go through it, I was molested. So she was nice enough to try with him. 6 years, he went for therapy. It did not help. It just didn't help. Doctors told me that if you catch it right away, it can help up to 80%. But if you don't catch it right away, it probably is a waste of time and money. At the end of the day, she told him, look, I tried 6 years, what else can I do? She got married, she has a house full of children, 7 or 8 children. He's still a bocher, he's looking for a shidduch. He's not looking, I'm just saying sarcastically. So these are the things that we have to know how dangerous this is. There was a chosn that jumped from the window. I knew him. I knew his history. What happened was he got married, he took a very rich girl, and the first night he didn't touch her. So we can say he was tied, the chassan, and we were dancing and everything. The next night she says to him, no. He says, I'll tell you the truth. I was abused. I did not touch you. She says, what? So why did you get married? He says, you want to know something? You're 100% right. I should have never done it. And he went out to the porch, he jumped down, and he got killed. We have to know it's not a joke when a child gets molested. Now, Baruch Hashem, it's slowing down a little, all these things, because we educate the people. First of all, there are slots that the United States government gives for people who need help. It's also cost in the tens and thousands of dollars. Here, I'll give you an example. To cure a child that was molested takes about a year. $400 to $600 an hour, every week, 1 or 2 hours. So you make your multiplication and figure out it's between $30,000 and $50,000. Now, if you don't have that money, then you're in trouble. The government steps in, fine. But this is what we're talking about. I remember a few months ago, somebody told me that a person went and he bought a rifle in upstate New York. So his friend says to him, "What do you need a rifle for?" He says, "You see that rabbi up there in the front? When I was a boy, he molested me in the mikveh. I'm buying your rifle to kill him." So the man says to him, the chaver, his friend says to him, "Did you ever use a rifle?" He says, "No." He says, "Why are you doing this? You might find 6 people before you'll find a rabbi, and the rabbi will walk away." He says, "You know something? You're right. But this is the anger that these people have." Anyway. Now, we're going to go in for a few minutes. Who are the most vulnerable children? The most vulnerable children is physical or mental disabled children. They're very vulnerable. Because you're not afraid to start up with them. He'll say something, you'll say, "Why?" He's saying, he's not all there. The second is Yesoimim, Yetomim, orphans. Big problem with orphans. 60 or 70% of people that we find now all claim they were orphans and they were molested. They were mamish sheit nechefke for everybody. Then, number 3 is divorced parents. When it's a broken home, you don't know where the child belongs to, and the child can't come complain to Tati. Usually it's mommy that takes the children. So it's a big problem. Then number 4 is broken homes. Broken homes is where the parents don't, get along. And these pedophiles have such a long nose and they know everything. They know with which boy to start and with which one not to start. Then the 5th is poverty homes. Poverty homes means a boy sees that everybody goes with a potato chip, a bumble, whatever they call it here, and these people watch and...
Rinkers, please?
Excuse me?
Just asking everyone to turn off their rinkers.
And these people, see that he comes with nothing, so he goes over to him, here's some candy, here's some cookies, here's some goodies. I always say, if you don't have enough money to buy your child snacks, because you need the money for wine for Shabbos, you don't need to make Kiddush. You're better from making Kiddush. Take that money, give it for your child. Your child should live up to par with all the children. If you don't eat supper one day, and you save that money to give for your child, there's a bigger mitzvah than letting him go out hungry, not hungry, but not giving him goodies, because then these people right away catch up there. Then, there's another thing, and it's very common, it's second marriages. Second marriages has a lot of problems, because the wife brings in children, the husband brings in children. Unfortunately, fathers do touch children. We have incest, which is 30%. And it's an embarrassing thing to say, but 30% of children are being touched by incest. Incest is their own father, their own grandfather, and their own brother-in-law. It's happening all over.
30% children?
30% children that are touched is from incest.
Oh, that are touched.
That are touched. You see, you have to understand, to get a boy off the street and get him into your house, it's not so likely, you see. But if it's somebody you know, and they come and they get a little drunk, and it's Hanukkah, and they slept upstairs and everything, this is what's happening. And I also explain, and I'm going to put it a dugish, you should hear, the Jewish people have more pedophiles than proportionally, of course, we're like 13 million compared to the Goyim, or 8 billion. We have more pedophiles than in the non-Jewish world for a very simple reason, because it's very easy by us to catch a child. What I mean to say is like this. If you want, God forbid, to molest a child, you either have to take him into your car, or you have to take him into your house. So by taking him into your car, there's a danger that the child saw it's a vulva, it's this, he saw 3 letters from the license plates. Oh, it's no good. It was in this street, that street, they usually go in their neighborhood. Or if you take him to the house, you can remember the house. We unfortunately have a klula that there's no evolution that has this klula. It's called a men's mikveh. This is the biggest curse that the Jewish people have. There is not a bigger curse than this. Now I want to specify. I'm not talking about women's mikvahs. Women's mikvahs are very tznius. The woman goes herself. She has somebody who escorts her to the mikveh and back. But most women think that when they send their child to the mikveh Friday, that's exactly what their mikveh looks like. So I'm going to explain it to you. The men's mikveh is a big swimming pool with fine warm water where it doesn't chase you out. And it has a capacity of 10 people to be in there, and there's 17 pedophiles, plus the children that push themselves in. It's not a metzias that the pedophiles shouldn't sin, and also that the children shouldn't be sinning. If it was up to me, I'd take big, big trucks of cement, pour them into the men's mikvahs, close them down. Nobody should go there. Children before 13, I don't see what they're doing there. They don't have to fast in kippur, they don't put on film. Why are they going into a mikveh? And even after 13, they should take a shower. There's the Tekunas Ezra, Tfilas Ezra. I know all these things, I'm not even going to get involved now. The tznius that goes on into men's mikvahs, they soap up without a shower curtain. 90% mikvahs don't have that. And there's the way when they go to the mikveh and they come back and it's all naked and children have to watch all this. Where? Why? We have the biggest curse with these men's mikvahs.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I didn't realize who you were. You'd be speaking tonight. About a month ago, I saw a very disturbing article in a secular.
Yeah, it's Vice, V-I-C-E.
Somebody, I think, interviewed you.
Vice, that's right. Yeah.
It was your, and they gave an account very graphically that you had witnessed. That was an accurate account?
Well, that's in Shupnik, right here. In Shupnik Schwitz. Yes, it is.
Right.
But this goes back 7 years ago, but it happened right here in Shupnik Schwitz. Zupnik. It's supposed to be the holy of the holiest.
And that was the first, you were the first person.
What? In Gula,
Sure.
about 7 years ago.
And you were that was the first person account. You were there.
I saw, in fact, I have pictures of it. I have 4 pictures where a 70-year-old man is doing anal sex with a boy. 7 years old. And I go in and I say to him, I make pictures. He didn't see because it's those, the telephone cameras. And then I say, you know what you're doing is krisus. He said, that's the worst thing you can do. So he has a whip there, he smacks me up, and I go out. And then the child came out, and I said to him, my dear child, is that your grandfather? He starts to cry, no, I don't even know him. I took a shower outside, he pulled me in there. And I said, do you have a home phone number? He says, yes. And I called up his father, come and pick up your child. And I said, take your child to a psychiatrist. He says, but it's a half an hour to Shabbos or an hour. I says, in Shabbos you should take it. Don't waste your time. The boy was molested. And then there was a din Torah because I went to Bezin and I showed them the picture. First they denied. Everything's denied. I put down 4 pictures. And then a go like this. I said, listen, if you're going to go like this, I'm calling in the Mariv and the Yod, the newspapers. And then they started saying, okay, we'll close it down. And it was closed down a half a year. It was closed down. And then they started making tekunas that with a bathing suit you could go there. I mean, this was one of my articles, and it's on the websites. You can see that the tent is down.
You never witnessed this in America?
I witnessed it all over, and I closed down every sauna in all mikvahs in Brooklyn. That's one thing I'm proud of myself. Sapper had one, I begged them to close it, otherwise there's going to be lawsuits. That's what they did. Everybody, the big one, Fleischman, I forgot his name, on 49th Street, I said, that's the worst thing that you should have.
And it's the norm that parents send their children by themselves, they don't go with their father, it's just the norm.
It's very normal, because the father, see, here in Israel, Friday is not a working day for most people. By us, Friday is a working day. Friday is a working day. The father comes home 10 minutes to the Zman, he has barely enough time to change his clothes and put on his shtreimel, and the children are all bathed already. A lot of people stopped at Sapper told me in Williamsburg that they're missing about 2,000 children every Friday the past 5-6 years since I'm talking about this. Because the mothers claimed that they never knew that.
Just also, Rabbi, it'd be helpful if you could give some background, because I understand you build mikvahs around the world. What started you building them? Because then we can relate this to what you're saying
let's
now.
put it this way. It's women's mikvahs that I build.
Women's
mikvahs have very, very big, schwere halachas, and there's very few people in this world now that know all the halachas.
Right.
There are very few. There's Rabbi Posen, he lives now in I don't remember where. He was my teacher. There's very few people. But men's mikvahs destroy them. Take a mirage, running into them when nobody's there. That did so much harm that you wouldn't believe how much harm. So many boys tell me I was molested in the mikvah. The boys are so innocent. And these old people, you know, they come to the boy, he's naked in the mikveh, they get close to him, they see how timid he is, how shy he is, and then they start, if he sees a small boy, he runs away, then they have enough.
What are the statistics? How many kids are being molested?
1 out of 2. What are the statistics? 1 out of 2.
Is this,
Of those who go to the
Williamsburg?
of those who hang out.
No, I don't take statistics in Williamsburg. I take statistics from people who are truly, and they don't want to lie about it. I take from England, I from London, I take from all Jewish communities.
50% of Jewish boys are being molested in the Orthodox world.
In Orthodox mikvahs, yes. Yes.
You know, the kids that go to mikvahs.
You're saying of kids who go to the mikvah,
kids
not
who go to the
50%
mikvah.
of Jewish Orthodox kids.
Well, let's put it this way. Most kids, you know, it's a funny thing. The Lithuanian people, the
They
Litvischer,
don't go to the mikvah.
they never go into the mikvah. And all of a sudden, Friday, they all come to the mikvahs. Well, what's happening? Stick to to your laws. Don't send children. That parents don't go to the mikvah, but they send children. I'll tell you why. Because the goy to the maid that washes up the house, Friday, she finishes 1 o'clock. And meanwhile, the children are not home yet, so the mother doesn't want that they should have to redo the showers and everything again. So they send them to the mikvahs.
So this one point seems to be a really constructive thing that you can try and disseminate in all the communities, is that boys under 13 have no reason to be in a mikveh anytime.
Okay, now we're working with the government, with the Child Abuse in America, the ACS, which is the American Child Service, that if a child is found without their parents before 13 years, they take him away as if his parents are not responsible people. We're working on that. We have it at the Rabbanim that signed for it because the government says, religion is state. And when this thing goes through, then it's going to come eventually to its Yisroel.
Well, what about here? You've described that you've been in touch with different rabbanim. Have you gone to the rabbanim and say, why don't all of you in your communities say that boys under 13 should not be going to? I'm a Litvak. I go only Arbi Yom Kippur, and I can say the mikveh is also full of little boys. I don't know what they're doing there, Arbi Yom Kippur.
Okay, so if you go only once a year Yom Kippur, why don't you go to your local rabbis as well? I have a few reasons why the rabbis won't talk to me. Number one, because I can't say, listen, I see this every week that's happening. Number two, I'm in ostracization. And not because I am. They'll try to get themselves out of this.
So I think this is something that Magen can start pushing.
Yeah, sure. You have to start pushing it. Everybody has to. This is very, very an unconstructive pattern that we do. So anyway, so let's go now further.
What's the percentage of girls?
Of,
Girls?
what do you mean by girls?
Girls who are molested.
Girls, the percentage of girls is like 1 to 10, and the percentage of boys is 1 to 5. That's the overall percentage, even in the Jewish. And you know, we sit a lot with the Goyim, and I can give you some statistics from the Goyim. They have almost the same thing. It's almost the same. We have, unfortunately, in the Hamish Talmud Torahs, a lot of teachers, women teachers, who do the most horrible things to the children. You probably all heard of the story of Chaya Leifer. You must have heard the story. This is a woman that got $150,000 to go in Australia to be a teacher. And she was supposed to be the principal of about 150 girls. And she lived here in one of these places, I don't know, Qatar or where. Anyway, she's a woman in her 40s, and she has 8 children. She went down to Australia, and people here in Australia, my hotline, and I was telling them signs, which I will read in a few minutes, and I'll give everybody a piece of paper, how you can find out if your child was molested or not. And all of a sudden, I get a call from somebody, I think my child was molested, and she's a girl. And I said, well, go to the rabbi. He goes to Rabbi Beck, who is Adas Yisrael. He's the rabbi of Adas Yisrael. And the rabbi says that if anybody cooperates with the police, and if anybody comes forward, they're going to lose status in the community. We throw them out, which was very bad. So this man calls me up. He says, what do I do now? The rabbi says, I'll lose status in the community. I said, no problem. You have a reform rabbi in your community, but I want a reform like somebody that eats Yom Kippur and eats Chazir. He says, I'll look for one. He calls me back 2 hours later, and he connects me with the rabbi and says, tell me, did you eat Yom Kippur? He says, 2 o'clock I called today. And I said to him, tell me, do you drive on Shabbos? He says, of course, otherwise I couldn't get to my shul. I said, I want to beg you for a favor. I'm Orthodox, you're Reform, but I need a favor from you. There's an Orthodox rabbi who's trying to suppress information that I received. I want you to find out if it's true. And this is about molesting 15 girls. Girls which were molested so bitter that the psychiatrist told me when he spoke to me, I doubt if they'll ever be marriage material. And it so happens that 4 of them were married, and all 4 were divorced within 3-4 months. This is what this woman did to them. And then, so I said to the rabbi, can you help me? He says, Rabbi, by all means, in 2 hours you'll hear from me. All of a sudden the police come to the shul, come in, they say we want an investigation. So the rabbi says in Yiddish, nobody should cooperate with them, because if anybody does, he's going to be thrown out. So the police says, what did the rabbi say? So they tell him what the rabbi said. He says, I want you to know that I'm going to close down in 24 hours the school and the synagogue and everything that you have, because you people are a cult. You're going to not go cooperate, we'll close you down. Okay, so they had to cooperate. Turns out this woman did the most horrific things to these girls. It's unbelievable. I wouldn't even be able to say it on a video.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Everyone here seems to be very shocked, very surprised. So it sounds like nobody here would do it, but you're saying that ultra-Orthodox rabbis, everyone, they're all fine with it, they all suppress it, and they all want it to keep on going on, BSL says, so BSL always. So why do you think that is?
Well, let's put it this way. The modern rabbis, they don't have a problem with it, and I'll tell you why. Because they can't control the people. I'm going to explain to you what I mean. Let's say if I was to live in Tallahassee, Florida, and the rabbi says I'll ostracize you, and I'm an other man. To me, Tallahassee, Florida, or Atlanta, Georgia is all the same. So all I do is I take an airplane ticket and I move from Tallahassee to Georgia. The Orthodox community has a way to suppress because for some reason we believe, which is not true, but we believe that if we won't live in Williamsburg, our children will live in Shmad. I go around all over the United States. There's not 3 weeks that I'm in the same place. Every 3rd week I'm in a different place. I check mikvahs. By the way, women's mikvahs. There's so many beautiful kehillas. Now there's a rabbi called Rabbi Sorsher. He was in Lakewood. He has 11 children, and Koko, not Yehuda, but Yosef Koko, molested his child. So the Rabbanim in Lakewood told him, we're going to throw you out right away, we're going to throw you out. So he says, it was nice knowing you. And he walked out with all his 11 children. So where did he wind up? He was in Lakewood. He had his own shul of 200 Talmidim, 200 Balabatim, and he winded up that he went to Detroit, and he came into the Rosh Hashiva, and he says, listen, I'm being kicked out because I went forward, and I want you to know I'm Rabbi Sorsher. He says, Rabbi Sorsher? You're the biggest Maggid Shir in Lakewood, in the yeshiva. He says, here, 300-400 Bocharim, you know, Detroit has a big yeshiva, Litvish yeshiva, and he gave him a job, and he's happy. And he went to court. I was in every time he went to court, I was there, and they gave him 11 years. You see, that's the thing. The thing is that we believe that if we won't be in Williamsburg, that's the end. So I myself, when I had the hardships, I was shot with a bullet, and I was thrown bleach in my eyes. It was all over in the newspapers, and I just moved away. I live in Williamsburg because I fight in Williamsburg, but on a daily basis, I'm out of town. I think I can raise my children just as good out of town, besides which my children are all grown up and they're on their own. But what I'm saying is that's why these Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox rabbis have a whip on you, because once they ostracize you, you feel you won't have any shul where to daven.
None of them are scared?
Now-
None of them are scared?
Now
For
they're
their
getting
family,
scared
for their
because
kehillah, for their...
it's coming
Where's the
out,
mention?
slowly but surely, it's coming out to the government what they're doing. There's a big case going on, it's called the Kellner trial. A lot of the people from Shmeir Satznius who extorted millions of dollars will be on that trial. We are starting to tell the government, and we changed, thank God, we changed the district attorney, and we're starting to tell them the pattern that these rabbis go. They ostracize you, they throw you out, and that's all illegal.
So let me understand. A person gets smicha, he has more Yas Shamayim or less Yas Shamayim?
Let's put it this way. The rabbis...
Why are they worse than everyone else? Why are they...
Why
what
are they
makes
worse?
what makes them worse?
He's not saying
Because
that.
he's getting, again, I explained two reasons.
Money.
One is because there's money involved, it's their revenue. And the other thing is, it's their ego involved. They didn't do anything all these years. Now, if somebody comes from the west side that doesn't know anything what's happening in Williamsburg, like myself, I mean, I live there, but I'm saying I have nothing to do with rabbinic courses and anything. And all of a sudden, slowly, and everybody's coming out.
So all the rabbis, they're all bad. There's not one who's
They
joined.
work together.
Who's joined up with you?
Well, they work together. What happens is they work together. One rabbi is a machut with the other guy. The other guy he works for this guy. He's a Rosh Hashiva there. So they have their own cartel. You know, the cartel. This is the rabbi.
They don't have one traitor in the whole cartel. Not one person,
Well, put it this
renegade.
way.
Not one.
Put it this way. I have now 90% of all the rabbis who work quietly. They say, yeah, you're doing good. They're throwing out malamdim. The rabbis that signed against me have now malamdim that they threw out, and they're calling me up. Listen, we got rid of another one. But in the open, they still can't do it because a rabbi once told me I can come down to his shul. The next day, he got a call. If you don't want your shul to burn down, don't let Rabbi Rosenberg in. And this is going to break because we are seeing the way this is melting, because now the government is aware of everything that they did. They're aware. It just took time because Mr. Charles Hines didn't want to hear about it.
Rabbi Wine just put out something this week. Rabbi Wine here in Israel, there's a big rabbi in
Yes.
Sharitar and Muncie. And he wrote a huge thing, and he published it all. He said that everybody should look at this. There's no difference between a Rotzeach and a pedophile. And if this is going to be normal in Yiddishkeit and the Yiddish world and everything, then that's it. We're finished.
So let me ask you a question. How many years did it take in a battle line to do that?
About 50 years.
50 years. Okay. So how many years did it take for Rabbi Tauber? Rabbi Tauber is a personal friend of mine. The first video he made of an hour and a half, I convinced him to do that because I fixed his mikveh. He had the women's mikveh and I helped him. So how many years did it take him to come out with it? Let me ask you a question. Hamidia now the Rabbanim tell them they should write about this. Once a year before the Shoshana, they write a little article about safety of children. But it's happening. I went to Rav Osner because I'm going to leave you all with the booklet, which is all the Rabbanim that I collected, signatures that you have to go to the police. Not only that you are allowed to go, but you have to go. I will leave it to you. You will see it cost me blood, sweat, and tears and money till I got these things together, and I have 11 signatures. This guy didn't want to sign because of him, and this guy didn't want to sign because of him. You'll see it. And you know who gave me the first 2 letters? Rav Eliashiv. Was he a big boy? Can anybody argue with him? He gave me the first 2 letters. So it takes time. It's not going to happen one day. Rabbi Wein came out, fine. Everybody's coming out slowly but surely because they can't deny it anymore.
I saw that in America, on websites, like there's a Chabad website in America that has all these pictures of all these...
Those are my Talmidim. It's called Crown Heights Watch.
Yeah. Right.
Seawald.
So I saw this,
Rabbi
it's not just from Crown Heights, because there was people I saw...
Mr. Seawald was molested, and I helped him to go to court. And the one that molested him got jailed. And then I said to Mr. Seawald, now it's your obligation to do for Crown Heights. You know how many arrests there's in Crown Heights? Mr. Seawald alone has 4 arrests in Crown Heights.
So how come here we don't hear names?
I want to explain to you why you are still not organized. This is what I'm coming here and I'm trying to help you out. We must organize ourselves. United we stand, divided we fall. I went to, what's that organization?
Magan.
Magan. I went to a few other ones. I wanted to see how they're doing, what they're doing that they can better themselves. But yet, on the other hand, I can't be in Yerushalayim for Shabbos. They see me there, they'll stone me. I have to hide in Tiberias. In Tiberias, I have to be for Shabbos.
Never.
You understand what's happening? Because we're still not aware that we have to take things in our hand. Last week, we went to fight on a rabbi Yoel Weber. I personally spoke to his father-in-law. His father-in-law was the principal of a big school called Beis David in Monsey. Very nice school. He took in his son-in-law, and his son-in-law molested tens of children. They came to me, so I went over to his father-in-law. His name is Bayer. I said, listen, your son-in-law is a pedophile. Get him out of here. So he says, no, it's not true. Fine. Till one day, Sally Forgan, one person, who is married now, full of problems because he was molested by him, sees him in the street, he starts to beat him up. He falls down, he's full of blood. And Sally says, call the police, I want them to know why I hit you. So the guy picks himself up and he runs away. He ran so far that he came into Israel. And now he has a moisture of 200 children under him.
Where?
It's a what?
In Beta?
He has 200 children.
And Sanhedrin Morhevet.
Sanhedrin Morhevet.
After Yehovah
And I was there trying to fight that they should put him out. So his door wasn't open. We caught video that the principal has an eye outside of his office and he's watching who wants to come in. So I'm screaming on the video that we caught. I don't understand. How can a principal sit in an office with a closed door? Who knows what he's doing there? Now it has 2 glass, big glass, on the Duke wall. But guess what? It's all covered. And that's not supposed to be that way. So he's running from there to over here. Beautiful. Then there's another guy who ran from the States. He came here. And he became a big Rebbe. You can see on my blog where he's giving donuts for small children. He has tens of children around here.
Beitar.
Who is this?
Beta.
This is in Beitar. His name is Rabbi Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum.
Sicaria.
The story with him is like this. He molested his child. His wife became crazy from finding out. She divorced him. She remarried. And she jumped for pain because he had visitations of the child. She killed herself. She jumped from a 5th floor apartment. We went to court and we told the judge that he can't have the child because we have so many witnesses that he molested children. The children didn't want to go through it. It takes time and everything. So the judge told them, listen, if you give up the visitations and everything from the child, you give it to the grandmother, I'm going to let you go. But meanwhile, the Askonim, I was against it. I felt he should go to jail. But the Askonim said he should go to Israel. So guess what? You can see videos where he's sitting with tens of children around, he's giving them donuts. That's supposed to be that way? So I went with a few other people to make a protest while he was giving the donuts. We found him by Marev, and I screamed at him and said, if you don't get out of here, I'm going to call the police because I know your history. So all of a sudden he disappeared. But how can he come into a place where you have 8,000 people living there, and nobody would ask, who is this stranger, a person without, he's not married, a loner, and he should have the, way to get to children with donuts?
They don't do background checks.
Now,
They don't do background checks.
you have all these things. You see what we need is that people should become a little more realistic. When you go to get a job, they ask you, where did you work, what did you do here and there, everything is, registered. How can it be that somebody, Yoel Weber, comes from New York, and nobody asks him who he is, how does he get here, what is he all of a sudden making aliyah with a house full of children? His father-in-law probably gave him a nice letter that he's an excellent mechanech. But all they have to do is pick up a phone. And this is one of the things that I'm here now to try to help. We need an office that has a computer. The Tum and the Keiles, these Rabbonim call it because they don't want all their schmutz to be out. We need a computer. I have on my computer all these Hall of Shame. What's his name? Seawald has Hall of Shame. There must be thousands and thousands of people. And yet people, there's just a story in Florida where somebody was hired and then they found out he's a child molester. So he goes to the Rabbonim and he claims, no, it's not true, it wasn't true, blah, blah, blah. I only admitted because I wanted to get off the jail term, whatever. And how the Rabbonim say that it's not true? But let's say it's not true. Why should he have any child, gisha, any closeness to children? And this is, we need an office.
I heard about somebody in Beitar Steinberg. He's this psychologist. Do you know anything?
No.
Okay. It's not because I heard one way and the other.
Okay. But anyway, so the other thing is we need is an office where somebody should go in to say, I have a problem. I want to tell you a story. I was doing a mikveh, a women's mikveh, not a men's mikveh, in Moncton, Canada. You know where Moncton, Canada is? Moncton, Canada is where the airplane comes into the States. First it goes over Canada because they fly on a half an angle. And it comes in, it's called St. John's. The province is called St. John's. And there's a city called there Moncton, Canada. So I'm doing a mikveh there. And I'm on a roof, on a very high roof, about 50 feet high, very slanty. And I have to check that there should be no engravings in the roof because then it's a beis kibul. And all of a sudden my phone rings and I answer the phone and it says, hello, this Rabbi Rosenberg, yes. This girl says to me, I'm 21 years old. Since 14, my father has intercourse with me whenever he feels comfortable. And I said to this girl, you're pulling my leg. You want me to have, get into an involvement where it's not true, and then you're going to say I was just a joke. So the girl says, Rabbi, if you don't believe me, then I go to the roof and I'm going to jump because I can't take it anymore. Okay? So I said, if that's the case, do me a favor, forgive me, and I will call the police right away. I call a detective who's involved in child sexual abuse, the top in Brooklyn, and I said, you have to be there in 10 minutes. He says, okay. So he goes out, he takes a police car, with the lights, and he says, drive me right away to this and this address in Flatbush. And he comes, all of a sudden he stops in front of the house, the siren stops. The father saw police was coming, so maybe he suspected something and maybe not. He took his oldest child, which is about 15, 16, and he says, you come with me, and he disappeared from under the earth. You don't know where he fled to. He could be in Israel. His name is Rabbi Benjamin Kranzler. He has an oldest medrash in Borough Park in Flatbush. He has a yeshiva ketana. Now the girl claims that he used to molest the boys upstairs from the yeshiva ketana. He would take him into the house upstairs. So they're looking now for the father and the son. You can see videos on my blog from him. He was by Sheva Bruchas. He's shaking like this. In other words, he's not, he's like 65, 66. He's not all that healthy. He molested 7 years his daughter. The FBI was involved in the case, and they wanted to know how a mother that has 12 children did not realize that this is happening so many years. And they came out here to the whole investigation that the mother is clean like a whistle. She didn't know anything. It's not that she knew and she didn't want to give it out. So these are the things that we need. We need somebody, I'm here now, right? And if the girl doesn't have my telephone, what does she do? She's going to continue like this? And she should first wait 7 years until she has where to go to talk to. We need an office. We need an office, at least a girl or a boy that was molested should be able to give a complaint. Then we'll worry to find the Rabbonim whether it's Messiah or not. We'll give out booklets. But before that, a girl, she was raped by her uncle. Where do you go now?
Do you have issues of false accusations against Rabbonim?
That, what?
Are there a lot of issues, false accusations against Rabbonim? Does that happen more?
What do you mean against Rabbonim?
I mean, children or parents accusing Rabbonim of molestations that they never did.
Well, let's put it this way. Every time somebody calls me up, I say 911, or here it's Achad 000. I am not authorized by anybody, I don't have license, and I'm not smart enough to do these cases. But those professionals, they pinpoint right away. A top detective in child abuse told me, first thing I find out if, the boy or the girl wasn't set up from either mommy or daddy because there's a divorce problem. And after that, we use our techniques. We know how to do it. They say we very seldom had a case that we, said that the child is saying the truth when he was lying. Of course, everything can happen. But usually the children are so innocent, and for them, it's not like something that they would use this as a revenge. They would rather use daddy hit me. They wouldn't understand that sexual abuse would be such a hard thing. So they have other things how they do it. But this is something that we don't do, we shouldn't touch. We're not here to do that. And here the Rabbonim are playing that they know you're a diet, and they're also playing the game that they know how to investigate. They don't know how to investigate.
Rabbi, what about the rabbis themselves that are doing the molesting? Forget about the ones that are going to the rabbis.
Right.
Like Nassim David Rabinowitz.
All of them. There's 11 rabbis, they signed 38 authorization, 38 rabbis signed my authorization. 11 of them are known to be pedophiles. 11 of them.
And the people who signed for you?
Yeah, they signed against me. 11 of them are known to be pedophiles. In fact, to keep it a little low, one of them talked a woman into having an affair with her while she was asking him Shailas and Hilchas Nida. And she claims she was shot after that, she never touched her husband, she divorced, and she claims that's the rabbi's son. And I said, sue him for a DNA. So the Rabbonim don't let. They said because if he's about the mamzer, then he can't come with Klal Yisrael. This way Sufik mamzer is allowed to get married. Let me tell you something. Rabbis are just as human as you and I and as any pedophile in the street.
Which Rabbanim says it's a Sufik mamzer, so it's better not to do testing?
4 or 5 Rabbonim told me that.
In America?
Yeah. Because this way it's a Sufik mamzer. Sufik mamzer is mitaluva b'kul. That's the law. And if it's about the mamzer with the DNA, then he'll never be able to get married. He'll have to take a gioris.
Sounds like a good swear. I don't know.
It's great. It's not good. It's great. It's great. But he killed this woman that went to ask Shailas. She wanted to be a very true sincere Yiddish Tochter. And while she was asking Shailas and Chasnid, they became so close that one time he asked her, "What about your love life?" He says, "Rabbi, my husband sits and learns all week, and he comes only Mishavas L'Shavas, and then sometimes there's a Chashash vest or anything, so sometimes in a month I see him once or twice." He says, "Whatever he's missing, I'll give you." This is an open story. Okay, now, so mikvahs is the first, yes?
It's a very naive question. I apologize. But I just can't see how someone does this and then goes home and makes kiddush.
I want to tell you something. The question is only the first time. The second time, it's not a question anymore. The Gemara says if somebody does something twice, it's nasik. It's an unfortunate thing that if somebody's into whatever he's into, he does it a few times, he doesn't even have a guilt conscience anymore. He doesn't even care. Not only that, he would tell the woman, you're a liar. And that's why I always repeat the story when I give shiur, because I want you to know, if you want to ask a rabbi a shaila, you have to go only where there's a, it's called a room where rabbonim sit there, and it's not that the woman has a personal contact. In America, I made such a way that the woman never sees the rabbi never sees the woman. It's a closed door, it's, you put it under like in a bank, you put under the bedika, and the rabbi just, if he has anything to ask you, he asks you, if not, you go further. Here I saw that the big bais that a lot of rabbis sit together. I don't think that's so much sneeze, because I feel that if a woman sees a lot of rabbis, she's a little embarrassed, especially the rabbi has to ask her certain things. Now, there's another way that we do it in the States, that we go to the Rebbetzin, and the Rebbetzin goes to the rabbi, and the rabbi doesn't even know if it's his wife's child or if it's somebody else's child. But the contact is something that shouldn't be.
Notice so they have mailboxes. They put it in the mailbox. Also, they generally tell the chassan to go instead of.
Yeah, but a mailbox is not so good because sometimes they can mix it up. You know,
they put an envelope. They write the
envelope, a number. It's not good. This way, she goes. She puts it under the door like in a bank. Not under the door. There's a window there. And the rabbi, if she has to ask her if it's a Shiviniki and which day, the first, third, or whatever, they speak. But nobody sees anybody. Anyway, so now, as I told you, yes?
I just wanted to mention, this isn't in the film community, but in Britain, where I come from, there's been this organisation called Childline, run by Esther Ransom, who's actually Jewish, but not full. Is that the sort of thing that you might think of trying to set up here? Some kind of way that somebody could actually contact somebody?
I don't know what she has, but there has been a lot of organizations that I sponsored, that I told them to do, and they're doing the same thing, what I'm telling you, but this has to be done. Now what I'm working on is an international community. In other words, if in Britain she has an office like that, I have one in New York, we should share all the information of people flooding and everything. It's time consuming and it's a lot of work, but it's going to get there. But I don't know what she's doing, but if she's doing this kind of organization. In fact, in Golders Green, I have a rabbi, since the story of this Rabbi Halpern broke out, and he opened an office just like I have in the States, and he also opened a hotline that anybody can call in and say, listen, I was molested, please, this is my number where I can be reached. So it's working. I went down to London, I got Channel 4 involved, and went into Rabbi Padova, you can see it on the television, and they said to Rabbi Padova, this guy saying, you know, I was molested, what should I do? Can I go to the police? And Rabbi Padova says, I know who molested you. It wasn't true. He was never molested. He just wanted to see what the rabbi's going to say because he works for the television. So the rabbi thought he was Jewish because he put on a yarmulke. And he says, I know who molested you, but don't do anything. I don't let you. You'll be ostracized. You can see it.
Which
you can see it on television.
Which of Padua? Which one? What's his name? What's his first? Huh?
Rabbi Ephraim.
Yeah. He's the biggest. In England, he's the biggest. The greatest thing
You can see on the television the whole time. He's telling him not to, and if not, I'll do this, I'll do that. When is this all wrong? Anyway, so now...
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
I understand you're saying to go to the police, but what about in Choshen Mishpat? What about in every other case? Is it Mesirat then?
What Choshen Mishpat? I don't understand.
In any case, somebody stole from him. Should he then go to the police?
No. Only here. This is Aroidev. Aroidev is much... Let me put it to you this way. The Rav Shafran puts it in very simple terms. I'll give you the book, and everybody can make copies.
With Menachem Mendel of Bnei Brak?
Yeah, Bnei Brak. He writes like this. When somebody's a roidev, you're allowed to kill him. You can kill him. But the Rishonim say, not today, because you're going to kill somebody. You go to jail for killing somebody, and he'll be in the street again. So you have to go to the police. We made the police system, so nobody should be a vigilante to take the law in their hand. And then he writes more than that. Listen to what he writes. Him and also Rabbi Halberstam. They write. he had lecture, and she was in Eidach
Why am I not?
And a Moshe, yeah, he writes like this. There are 4 other things that you can call him in court. You don't have to go to a bezin. And it's called Nezek, Tzar, Ripeh, Shevis, and Moshes. So Nezek is the first thing, and then Tzar, Ripeh, Shevis, and Moshes. You're allowed to go to court. Because this is what he did to you. He ruined you. You'll see it. I'll leave one copy here. I gave out so many copies, but you can make copies for everybody that wants it. Now, so we went over mikvahs is the worst. Then there's ritual, which is malamdim, teachers. Then there's incest, we spoke about. Then there's the stam pedophiles. People who have nothing what to do. Go out hunting for children. Well, until now they were supposed to do it because they had no price to pay. There was no ticket, but now they're going to pay for it. Then there is children with adolescents, and this is what we have to talk a little bit about.
Children without what?
Children with adolescent children. In other words, bigger boys and
Younger children.
Younger children. In the schools, obviously, not every kid has a separate, class. So there are bigger boys and smaller boys. When you find a bigger boy, sometimes they know already more than the child knows, and then he uses the child to do whatever he wants. I always say in all the yeshivas that I talk that they shouldn't even keep the same toilets for these big boys and the small boys. First of all, the small boys need something to get up on the toilet because they're, not so tall. So you might as well make extra toilets for them. The other thing is children with children. But we have to teach our children the private parts of their body. And we have to teach them that nobody, and that means nobody, not even daddy, nobody's supposed to touch them. And they should never get undressed for anybody. And even though he says he's a doctor, unless one of the parents is inside. There was a story now in the newspaper about a half a year ago that a doctor raped a girl, a dentist. So they came to court. It was here in Israel. They came to court. So the doctor says, how can you say that I raped her? The mother was there the whole time. So it took them time to figure out that the mother was in the waiting room and he was in the room where he has that chair, that he can bend it sideways and tilt it any way he wants. And she was not in there. So when you go to a doctor with your child, you make sure you stand as close to your child as you could. And nobody's supposed to touch them. And when you teach this to your children, then half of the war is done. And then you got to teach him, you should be very courageful, you should be strong about it, and if anybody touches you, don't be afraid to scream, to shout. Run to mom, your daddy, and call 911 or 100. The children have to know. Just like if a person goes into war in front, they teach him. You got to know the enemy is going to kill you any minute. The children have to be taught, and it's no sneers in not teaching the children. They wanted to say that my hotline is not sneers because you're teaching children what they shouldn't know. There's no sneers in not teaching children. They're going to find it out, but it's going to be a very, very bad price to pay. And you have to teach the girls extra and the boys. I usually tell them, teach the girls that whatever the bathing suit covers is your private places, and the boys is wherever your bathing suit covers. So the girl has the bra also, the bra helik. She has to know. And you have to teach all the children, you should never sit into anybody's lap. In the shul, people take other people's children into the lap. This is all not accepted. And I always teach the parents, you go to shul, right? You're davening, so how can you watch your child? So imagine this is a shul. The children are out there playing, there's a toilet here. How can you watch your child? And usually the big shuls, the toilets are down there. So it's either you're not davening or you're not watching your child. So I teach them before the Yom Tovim come and everything, one father should sacrifice his davening and he should watch the children and outside. And they're doing it. Somebody called me up 2 days after Rosh Hashanah. By the way, what did they read Rosh Hashanah Kriyas HaTorah? I said, whatever they read. I mean, it's history now. He says, I'll tell you why. Because I was watching the children outside. I said, well, then you did the biggest Kriyas HaTorah. couldn't be better than you. Don't fool yourself. You're sending your child, it's easy for the mother, she sleeps Shabbos a little later. You don't know what's going on. It's a disaster what's going on. Well, now it's very much controlled, but it used to be mamish a disaster.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
You mentioned the girl in the Mikveh Keilim in Bnei Brak.
Yes.
Can you give me details? Because I want to check it out. Like, what was the date? Or
It was in all the papers.
On Yom Kippur.
It was in all the
which Yom
papers.
Kippur?
The day after Yom Kippur.
No.
On Yom Kippur.
It was on Yom Kippur.
No, but it was
you
publicized.
mean
I saw it in the
published?
paper the day after Yom Kippur.
So there was
A
this
little
year.
girl drowned.
This is
in the-
not this year. This gewesen in Kippur. It's only about 2.5 months.
All the kids were
It happened in Bnei Brak?
In Bnei Brak. I even saw on the internet pictures of the mikveh.
Oh, yeah, I heard about
everything.
that, but they didn't say it was a murder. They said it was that they by accident they left the mikvah open. Yeah.
No. They didn't say a conclusion yet. But I read on some blogs that there was an autopsy done and she was 4 times banged in the head.
Can you talk to us a little bit about our neighborhood?
About?
Our
Here.
neighborhood?
About your
Shemesh?
neighborhood, Bet Shemesh, I want to tell you something. Yitzchak Admon, who is in Israel, he's
What's Tzaddik Shlomo Yeled?
the child protection. He claims Bnei Brak is the Ira Pedophilim 1, and this neighborhood is number 2, Bet Shemesh. I want you to know, Bet Shemesh has a long history that I can go into. I did a mikveh in Bet Shemesh in Kiryat Remu. It's a mikveh of a $2 million project. I worked here weeks and months and months. It's a women's mikveh. You probably know it's the big mikveh.
In Base.
What?
Base.
In Base. Okay, that's the mikveh that I designed and I built it. I was here for years.
Chabad? The Chabad? The one that-
No, it has a
Kiryat
Chabad
Arama.
mikveh as well.
down the hill.
Yeah,
The
I
one that
don't
has
know. It's out
the
there.
fish?
Yeah,
the
the
fancy one.
fish.
In those few weeks, when I was here, and this goes back maybe 7-8 years ago, there were unbelievable stories of rapes and rapes and rapes. There was a rabbi here that molested boys in the mikveh. There was a rabbi that had a shul that we closed them down.
When you say here, that all over the place?
Let me put it to you this way, I don't know.
Beit Shemesh.
There was a Rabbi Horowitz who had, he used to take in everybody in the shul, and winded up as a child molester, and somehow that upon him, because his father is a big rabbi in New York, they drove a deal that he should just close down the shul and that's it, and everything will be fine.
You mean the Boston Red?
No, that's, his father is Spinker, Horowitz Spinker from Williamsburg. He doesn't have a shul anymore, but big deal, he goes to the mikvahs. And there were other stories in different mikvahs. Vishnitz has here a very big boys and men's mikvah. Vishnitz. Don't know even exactly where it is. They called me up once and again that there's so much trouble going on, so much trouble. There's one mikvah, it's called the Lelever mikvah. I got Lelev? I got so many complaints. It's a hefke mikvah. Everybody does with the children whatever they want. So,
Excuse me, I'd like to ask a rather chutzpah question.
yeah.
But I see that you're of Hasidic extraction, and almost all the instances you've been telling us have been about Hasidic communities. Can you talk more about non-Hasidic communities and what's
Well,
going
let's
on?
put it this way. I don't know only my community, because in Lakewood, they wouldn't discuss it with me. They would throw me out. You have to understand, where I come from, where I grew up, I know everything that's happening. But when you're telling me to go and tell you what's happening in Pittsburgh or in Cleveland, I don't have any in these places. But I want to tell you something. I want you to know. What happens by the Hasidim, happens by the Litvish, happens by the Havim, the Goyim. It's the same all over. If you don't protect our children, they are lost.
What are you talking, Litvish kids don't call your hotline?
They all call my
Of course they
hotline,
call.
but the Rabbonim in Lakewood, I went once to Rabbi Solomon, the old guy. He's an old guy. Matzil Solomon. I went and I said to him, I want to discuss certain problems that you have in Lakewood, because Lakewood, the boys also call me. And they're also on drugs. And there was one of the Rosh Yeshivas there that had a yeshiva for Shvacha Buchar that were a little, not so good in learning, and they were all on drugs. So Matashir Solomon says, no, I don't want to hear anything, God, it's not true, it's Lashon Hara, it's Lechidas, it's everything else. I said, goodbye, and that's it. You have to understand, in my community, they can't do anything because I know everything with the name and all. But I go into a different community, what if they need trouble, that I should start putting them on the hotline?
But this is exactly what you said right now, is what
So the
happened
stuff
with
that you know
with
about
Rav
here is
Kolko.
only about the Hasidic stuff, you don't know here about the schools and all the different things?
Again. The stuff that I know here, first-hand information is about the Hasidische, because a Hasidische person would tell me. You have to understand, he knows me, and he would tell me. But it doesn't mean that it's not happening. It's happening all over, it's the same.
Can I ask you a question?
I'm gonna keep raising.
David wants to say something.
Well, do you want me to update people about the situation in Beit Shemesh?
What?
Yes,
Yeah.
Again,
Yes?
yes, David, stand up.
Yes, so stand up,
Stand up.
sure. Before you start, can I just have a word with you? You wanted to ask a
Yeah,
question?
just wanted to ask, you went to Matisyahu Salomon, he's a very well-known mashgiach, he writes all these books,
Yeah.
English and Hebrew,
Right.
and basically you're saying that he said, I don't want to hear about it, not interested.
Correct.
So I assume that means that a person maybe shouldn't accept Torah from him. So who should a person accept Torah
Well,
from?
let's put this slowly. In Shulchan Aruch it says, as a mensch, a person that has a certain weakness to certain thing, like let's say he's tznus, he's not allowed to be only either gittin kedushin. On shturas, he's trustworthy. If somebody is mafricha yoina, then he's only not allowed to be on shturas, on mumanas, but on either gittin kedushin, he's never. I want to tell you something. You can't take the person and say because he said that he's disqualified on everything. You can't do that. He's disqualified where his position is in jeopardy. He has a position, he gets a few $100,000 a year or whatever it is, he has a pension and all, and he's not willing to go into a fight with everybody. So when it comes to dinamumanas or to other things, or into sexual abuse, I would not trust him, because that's his weakness, because he has to do that. But I should say that his musar is not good because of that? I would not say that. So let's not build a whole empire and then disqualify everybody. Let's stick to our guns. Every rule, the Torah says, Ki ashoichet yavar eine chachumim. You know what eine chachumim means? The Torah calls him a chachum. And in kozeh, if he has a negir for money or for kuvat or for whatever it is, he has this problem. Okay, now here's again, here, take over. And after that, we'll just do a fast feeding of these 10 signs of child abuse, and then we're here for questioning. Here, stand right here.
Introduce yourself.
for a very powerful presentation of the problems that you've been dealing with for the last 7 years in Chicago. In terms of the situation here in Beit Shemesh, so we have Magen, as you probably know. I'm the guy who runs Magen. I started it. I started it because of one particular incident. I'm also the head of the Manachai, and in that position, so people come to me with all sorts of problems. They go and buy a bag of milk from the Marcolet, and it's at least an hour and a half, probably, until I get home. And whatever, that's my burden. Russia. And along the way, various people said that their kid has said that they were molested. And so I helped as much as I could with some of these cases. But the one that really made the difference was where somebody came to me. They said that their son had been. They said that the son said they'd been touched inappropriately by their Rebbe in a Talmud Torah. My Rav was out of town, and I went to another Rav in order to get a heter, in order to take it to the police to get it properly investigated and dealt with. And he said, no, you can't take it to the police. You have to take it to the Vadat Tzniut, the Modesty Patrol in Geula, in order for them to investigate. This is a Rav that we probably all know and respect.
What's his name then? The rabbi was mentioning names. The rabbi mentioned names.
You're on YouTube, don't mention your name.
Maybe Rabbi
Some of us know the
Safranovich.
name.
No,
If his name is Safranovich, then I have a story.
so wrong. He's the guy who went to see.
When I had a problem with the mikveh in Zhupnik, he says I can't start with the Edacharedis because they giving me the issue that I can collect money. Quote, this is
So Safranovich was the guy I was sent to.
Who?
Safranovich.
A guy called Rav Safranovich.
Sneus, bad as Sneus, is that it?
He's
No,
the
it's
Sneus
made of
patrol.
such news.
He runs about a Sneus in Gula. It was quite an experience. But that was against the law. It was against any best professional practice you could think of. And I think it was against the halakha. According to my rabbi, it was against the halakha.
It's against what Rabbi Yashiv says, I understand what you're telling us.
All that are women that are not afraid.
So at that point, I decided that this community needs something that will stand up on these three grounds. It has to stand up with the law. This Rav turned me, and therefore potentially L'man Achai, into a criminal organization. By saying this is what we have to do, that was what he was saying. It's basically an illegal order. What do you do when you have an illegal order? It's a toughie. It's a real dilemma. The first thing that again, three principles. One is law. Two is best professional practice. And three is halakha. And our position is that all three of these value systems coincide on child protection. They all say the same thing. They all say that there are authorities who are qualified, experienced, authorized to deal with this. There's a huge resource out there, and they have to be brought in to help. You have a fire out of control. You don't say, we need to keep this within the community, we don't want anybody to know, right? And I'm sure it was just a little spark that somebody put off. My goodness, there's a fire, there's a fire brigade out there. Yes, they're not necessarily from, right? But there are a fire brigade that know how to put out a fire, right? So anyway, so we started again about 3 years ago. And we have the hotline that the Rav mentioned. People call us, and they say that something happened to them, something happened to their kid. They call and say that they're worried about a certain thing they've seen. What do we think? Get a reality check. Is it normal? Is it not normal? People call with a lot of different issues, questions, information.
David, how come you can't do like they do in the States of putting names on?
Registry, sex offender registry.
How come you can't do that here? So that we probably talk to some of these people, like
yeah,
there are people
there's a lot of problematic people around. The numbers who call us are double every year as the name gets out and as the community becomes more aware. So more and more people are calling with problems. Just to give you an idea of numbers, so this year, the first half of the year, we had the same number of cases as the whole of the previous year, 2012.
What's the jurisdiction? All of Beit Shemesh or just?
All of Beit Shemesh. All of Beit Shemesh, and we get calls from all over the country and all over the world. We get people calling from the States, and from Australia, and from England. Not a lot. Normally it's because there's some connection to Israel, there's some connection to Beit Shemesh. This case with Weber, so we have independent information. You have your information, we have our information about the same guy who went from Monsey to Beit Shemesh, and is now the Mefakeach, he's now the Menahel of a Talmud Torah in Yerushalayim.
200 kids.
So this year we've had best part of 100 cases. This year, best part of 100 cases.
How many people live in the whole Beit Shemesh? How many?
There's about 100,000 people in the whole area.
And you have how many cases?
About 100.
And you have to know for every case that they call out, there must be about
yes, so
what, 5 or 10 that they didn't call out.
We're still scraping the surface. We're still scraping the surface. The people who mainly call us are Anglos. Not because there's more happening in the Anglo community, but there's more awareness in the Anglo community. More awareness about the problem, more awareness about...
And less taboos.
Less taboos.
Yes.
Right.
Less taboos.
There seems to be, because Israel is Israel, that a lot of people are, like, they get extradited or they flee to Israel from the other places that they've been kicked out, like America.
Well, we have the same way that people flee from Israel to America. We have now the Shomer Aminim Rebbe, who was sitting 20 years in jail, and now he's in New York, in Muncie. He bought himself a house. And I made aware on my hotline that he's a pedophile.
What's his name?
His name, Shomer Aminim Rebbe. What's his name?
So how come in America they...
So wait, let me. What's his name? No, not Horowitz. Shomer Aminim, what was his name?
The one that lived in Beit Shemesh and then moved to Israel?
Yeah, the one that moved, the one that, anyway, I don't remember his name, but anyway, he came to Muncie, and I made the Muncie aware that the man was sitting in jail 10 or 15 years for touching his nieces and nephews. And now he's out, he came to the States. So one neighbor decided that it cannot be that he got a visa to come into the States legally because he's a registered pedophile here in Israel. So he goes and calls up Homeland Security, and he tells him. Homeland Security comes to his house, they knock on his door, and they say, hey, how did you get in here? So he shows his visa, the application. It says there like this: did you ever molest the children? No. Were you ever in jail? No. So they handcuffed him, and now he's in jail in the States, and he's going to be in front of a judge to see what to do with him, to send him back here in jail or to keep him there in jail. Let me tell you something. It has nothing to do because Israel is Anura Miklat. Israel is Anura Miklat for foreigners. Foreigners, in vice versa, the other way around. The people from Israel run to other places.
Yeah, like this guy, the guy in Canada. The guy started the cult in Canada.
That's right.
Helmbrins.
How come in America that you're able to, I think somebody else said it, post or their names or pictures, but in Israel we're not?
Okay, so let me just answer that question. In America they have Megan's Law. Okay. And Megan's Law, tell me if I'm right, is basically is a online listing of registered sex offenders. These are people who've been through the legal system, they've been found guilty, they've been convicted, they've been sentenced, and they become officially a sex offender, and then they are monitored online. And basically, you can put in your postcode, and you'll see how many of these guys live within 100 yards, 200 yards of you or your kid's school or whatever. It's a system. Even that is talking about a very small minority of the problem, because these are people who have been convicted and have been registered. For everyone that's registered and convicted, there's many more that aren't. So one of the problems about it is it gives people a false sense of security. Look, there's nobody within 100 yards of my house. We're here, and there's nobody within 500 yards of my kid's school. So my kids are safe and I'm safe. My advice to everybody, I'm sure the Rav will agree, is the assumption should be that there's one of these guys in every shul, in every school, on every street, and in every extended family. Right? That should be your working assumption. Right? Whether they appear on some list on the internet is really neither here nor there. If you're not going to protect your kids against the unknown risk, then there's no point in quantifying the known risk, because the underreporting of these offences is huge. The Rav said that the Beit Shemesh has a reputation in this and in most other fields, not a particularly good one. We in 2010, when we again started, so we had this tremendous chus of having the lowest child abuse reporting rates in the whole of Israel, right? Which either means one of two things. Either means we live in Gan Eden, and our kids are ultra safe, or it means there's a huge amount of underreporting going on. Unfortunately, the second seems to be the case. Underreporting is a big problem because it means that kids are not protected, kids are not treated. The perpetrators have a free hand. There are no consequences. There's no stopping them, and there's no treating them, right? Because they also sometimes are treatable. So the problem just gets worse and worse. The statistic that the Moed Shalom Yled, you mentioned, Yitzhak Kadmon, so his organization puts out a thick book of statistics, and a couple of statistics that are interesting. Actually, one is the underreporting. No, underreporting is about 1 in 10. In other words, 90% of cases are not reported in Israel. So whereas the statistic is about 2% are reported, right, it's only 1/10 of the real problem. So there's about 20% of kids who are being abused, have been abused, which actually is not a crazy figure, because there's a new study put out by the Haifa University that basically said that 50% of kids by the age of 18 have been abused either sexually, physically, emotionally. Yeah.
I've heard that statistic before, and what is defined then by sexual abuse? Because there has to be...
So first of all, the sexual abuse number is about 17%, 1/7, which is consistent with...
1 to 5. That's
1
more
to 5.
right figure,
Yeah.
1 to 5. I saw that from Haifa.
It's consistent with other studies, and there are also things called something like mega studies, but it's not mega studies, it's something else, which macro studies, which is where basically people do a study of studies. So they may look at 100 studies around the world and come up with what a collected number. So it comes to about 1 in 5.
No, I mean, what are they defining?
Oh, what are they defining? So I don't remember the exact definition, but it is clearly it's criminal. So it's defined by the law as what is sexual abuse. But abuse, I don't remember the words they use, but they define it quite tightly. It's it's not solely an issue of somebody's chatted up who's not interested, or maybe in a bus somebody gets up too close to them. These are not. These can be traumatic incidents. I'm not sure to what extent they're registered as sexual abuse of children. I don't know, but it was quite tightly defined.
Quick question. Something that I mean, I don't know if you're avoiding it because you have to avoid it because of whatever, but we understand that the numbers are a lot bigger. They're unreported. We understand that. The thing is that in America, there's a face. There's a Mondrowitz. There's a Weber. There's a face behind the monster. You can see the monster. Here in Beit Shemesh, we hear of monsters, but this rabbi won't say you're allowed to. Like everybody here, we're living in a cloud where it's not being told. There is a monster. There are registered sex offenders here in Beit Shemesh.
Correct.
Why cannot we forget about the rabbis? Who cares about the rabbis? Let's put out the list and let people worry about it.
What prevents it from being on a website?
That's what I said, this has to be done.
There is a website.
What prevents you from names get leaked out, we put on paper, and Yoni and I go put them up around town?
Exactly, I have no problem doing it.
There's a website called Bisheket.
I use that. I use them all the time.
Okay, so Bisheket is a private enterprise where people have done exactly that. They put up the photos where they have them. Also, it's a sophisticated system. They don't just take my word for it, your word for it, right? They need to see court documents. It needs to be for real. So, or reports in the newspaper, or it's not just schmort. It has to be a pretty concrete case for them to put it up. Again, it's very partial listing. What I know of Beit Shemesh, and you look at their website, there's a lot missing. But it's something, and they're doing it in an organised way. I wouldn't want to just have one for Beit Shemesh.
You're seeing
Why not?
You're seeing a recurring theme, right? You're getting a call, and the same person from different parts, different people, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. It doesn't take a rocket science to say, okay, listen, there's a problem with this person. They're conducting themselves.
We work very closely with the police and social services, and in one case it's quite enough for us to raise the alarm. We don't need 3 or 4.
But why wasn't this rabbi from Torah Solio's picture put up in the neighborhood like they did in Borough Park? Put a picture up of the guy and say, this guy's a Rebbe in Torah Solio.
Okay, so
what's the problem?
So let me, it really depends what kind of community we want to live in. I'll tell you why. If somebody's a car thief, if somebody is a wife beater, if somebody is a tax fraudster, if somebody is just downright dishonest and a thief, we all want to hear about this guy because we may be doing business with him. Right? We may be living next door to him. Right? Do we really want to live in a community where there are posters on every single lamppost about some other guy who's highly undesirable, who's a neighbor?
I think we'll deter those people from living here.
Sure.
They're living here.
Well, yeah, but if there were posters up there, I don't think they would be feel comfortable
And
living
there's two
here.
things too.
And then we live in the Wild West.
Yeah, but there's two things.
There's a plus and minus. The Soviet Union had very low crime rates, right? You couldn't go out freely and go wherever you wanted. There's a KGB guy following you.
To an extent, it does. In America, the registered sex offenders does work. It does work. It does. Obviously, you're 100% right. Millions of other pedophiles that we don't know about, and they're going around freely. But when it comes to these specific people, there's a red light that goes off. If you look online, you're saying you're Torah Tamima, Rabbi Koko's name, that's it. His face is plastered. He can't get an aliyah. He tried getting an aliyah. They threw him out of shul. His nephew did the same thing. Here in the neighborhood, we have the same kind of problem. And the problem is that nobody here wants to say, you know what, this monster, he's my neighbor, and this is his name. His name is Schwartz.
There's another thing that you have to be aware of. If you look at the newspapers, every time there's an arrest, there was 2 Rabbonim, 2 Malamim that were arrested in the neighborhood. Did you see how the pictures came out in the newspaper? Big hat like this, and then the other guy, he didn't have a hat, so he took his mantle and he covered himself like this. And in Israel, I have never seen names. Very seldom do I see the names in the newspapers, and I wonder why. There must be a law against all this.
The rights of the suspect are quite considerable in Israel. They don't have
what about
this.
David, let's go to the heart of the matter. What about the convicted felons? Are there convicted sex offenders living here in Beit Shemesh?
Yes.
So why has Magain not published their pictures and their names? Forget the suspects. It's forbidden to search. A suspect, he's presumed innocent, he's convicted. Convicted felons of sex offenders, you know their names and their pictures, you're not publishing them here in Beit Shemesh? I don't understand. That's what you guys exist for. That's what you're here for.
They also have rights, believe it or not.
No.
They've served their 3 years in prison or their 10 years in prison. You're a lawyer. Right.
And there's no, for convicted felon, there's no...
And they have, and they serve their time, they've done their thing, you can't put up. I've come to you as a lawyer for my defense, right? When we get sued for doing it.
So then what can you do? Is there anything that you...
So go to this website. B'Sheket, right. There is the website.
And it's mutter for them, and it's also for you?
I don't know how to do it. They must have a good lawyer.
Can I ask what sort of obstruction have you come up against with installing cameras in Mossadot and also mikvahs in the Beit Shemesh area?
They can't do it in mikvahs.
No, but they can do it when you go in and out. So if a boy says I was molested at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, they can take the picture and ask him who it was. We do this all over. In the States, we have that all over. You know where there's the turnstile where you pay the few cents? They're right there. So a boy comes out crying, I was just now molested. What time was it? 12:01? Fine, we know everybody that was in the mikvah.
I'm just going to take another example. One of the things, because we constantly discuss this, debate it, because it weighs very heavy on me and it weighs very heavy on everybody else that's involved in Magain. Is this issue, to what extent should we warn the public about specific risks? And it's not a resolved issue, so I welcome feedback.
What about leaks? Leaks to the press.
Leaks to the press. Leaks to us.
Okay, leaks to us, or leaks to people.
This past week.
You don't have to mention them again.
This past week, we were told by the prosecution's office that one of the people that we'd helped put behind bars or whatever, he's arrested, was being charged with a whole list of offences. And for us, this is important information to get out there.
After you were behind bars?
What?
When he came out?
No, he hasn't been to prison yet. He was in prison while he was waiting trial and stuff. But he's at the stage where he's about to get charged. We thought he was going to get charged this past week. There was some kind of complication. It will be sometime soon. The wheels of justice roll very slowly, so we discovered. So we wanted to publicise it. So I said to the attorney in the district, in the prosecution office, I said, "Oh, well, can we publicise that he's being charged?" And they said, "There's no secrecy notice, there's no secrecy order on this one. But you might want to discuss it with the victim, right? Because maybe the victim doesn't. Because as soon as you name who the person was, right, then that fairly clearly can identify the identity of the victim. This particular guy is a divorcee. He's from our community. He's a divorcee. He has kids who don't have anything to do with him. Right? There's no connection, as far as I know, day to day, week to week, month to month. But they hold the same name as he does. So McGinn comes out and publicises Joe Schmo and this kid Schmo, right? Who's going to pay a price for that? Right? He sits in class with your kids, and everyone's going to say, well, your father's the paedophile.
But David, that's not the way it works anywhere else in the world.
I don't know. I was saying these are issues.
Of course it's an issue.
These are issues, and we're helping the
Wait,
family.
then what happens if a week later he gets indicted and he gets arrested for one thing? Why do we worry about him?
I mean, we're helping the family. We're helping the family, his family, right? We've been supporting the victims. We've been supporting his family because because in any case they've already paid consequence. It's tough. It's tough. It sounds very easy. Let's put up posters of these guys all over town. But it's a lot more complicated than that. And anybody who has a simple answer that really
my
works.
question is, why is it different here, Beit Shemesh, or in Israel? Any different than Australia, America, England?
You're not going to find wanted posters all over the place in England.
Sure, in America you will. Sure, you put up a thing. Religious sex offenders list. You get 100 names. 100 rabbis.
The Megan's Law.
No, not just on the Megan's Law.
Yeah.
Not just on the Megan's Law. In the States, when there's a registered sex offender in a neighborhood, okay, no matter what, first of all, number one, he has to check in with the police. Second of all, he's not allowed to come near a school. Third of all, everybody in the shul knows who the guy is. Everybody knows who it is, and you know what? It's a brach that his children are hurt, but you know what? That's not, everybody else doesn't have to pay for that. Not my kids and your kids don't have to pay because his kids are suffering. You know what? His kids are suffering because of him, not because of his human nature.
I had once a case, and they were saying there's a father of 10 children. You know, we were prosecuting him. So I said, wow, I didn't know he's a father of 10 children. I thought he's not married. He runs around with boys. I didn't know he's a father of 10 children. Who was the first one to know that he's a father of 10 children? He himself, the pedophile. Now, if he didn't care, why should we care?
I have.
Look, the man knew that he has a wife and 10 children. He's going to mess up their lives.
Can I answer something? The difference is that Byron would have said it. We live in a community. If you live in a community and you have neighbors, it's much different than somebody just living on the street. In America, generally speaking, you live in also with Jews and also with Goyim. You want to know what your kids will say. Over here, we're all involved with each other. It's a much different kind of element when you say that you're going to destroy other people's lives and other children's lives. And you're right, Rabbi Rosenberg, if he didn't care, maybe we shouldn't care. But on the other hand, he's sick. You can't use that. He doesn't have the right kind of thinking process.
If he's sick, he should go to a ward, to an institution or someplace. I want to tell you, there's basically no difference in your community and in ours. The only difference is that we're working on this a few years already, since 1970, And that's why we are ahead of the game. In 10 years from now, if I'll be here, Mitzvah Hashem, and you'll all be here, and we'll have half of the problem solved, as Hashem, you will see it only works this way. It only works when you expose the guy and everybody watches. And that's it.
And by the way, I would say, isn't it maybe a bigger problem from what you just described? Because here the fence, like the fences are down. Like on the street, you're concerned, who's this person? But here you're like, the kids are in the school with him, and you see him at the shul, and this and that. You figure it must be a stand-up person. So here you're like, you're not as concerned.
Let me just say something. There was a rabbi, that was my rabbi in America. There was a rabbi of a shul in Flatbush for many years. I grew up in a neighborhood. There was not one goy or non-frum Jew on my block. All frum Jews, just like Ramat Beit Shemesh. All frum Jews. And this is a rabbi for 25 years. Was a rabbi in Abbas Torah. Okay, he was a Rosh Yeshiva of Abbas Torah. He was a Rosh Yeshiva of, he was a Rebbe of a shul. He was a Rebbe in Moisdes and all different places. Okay, and they caught him, God knows what they caught him. His name is Nassim David Rabinowitz. Okay, they had the police caught him in a sting operation. Okay, on the internet, speaking with an underage girl, to meet up with an underage girl. This is on all the newspapers. He was on the television. He was on the television. I know this person for many years. I thought he was a wonderful tzaddik, and he was my father's father. He knows everybody. The kid, sir, this low life, okay, his picture is all over. He has no more shul. He was thrown out. I lived three houses from him. His house is gone. His wife has the house with the children. He's gone. Motzei Shabbos, after this happened, his wife threw out his clothes in the street. This is the most Haredi, Litvish person you could possibly imagine. He wears a bekisha on Shabbos. He's the most Haredi. You would never think that he's a pedophile, okay? She threw out his things. He was thrown out of the yeshivas. He was thrown out of his shul. He has no more shul, no nothing. And this picture is up all over, not to give him a job, because he's a Rebbe in Yeshiva, Talmud Torah. Everybody knows who he is. He goes around now Brooklyn looking for some kind of position. He's finished. That's what we need here. The guy from Torah Elio, he's got a great job. He's in administration. I know the guy. People know the guy. No, you can't say the name. And then there's another guy here that escaped from America. He's living, you can't mention his name because, his father's a rabbi. You know what? It's enough already. Enough. So you don't put it out. Leak it to somebody, and then let it. There should be knowledge. Maybe not posters, but this guy lives in Nachal Love.
That's crazy.
There should be at least something. You have thousands of people coming.
At least it should be barred from synagogues and mikvahs. That's
Sure.
the least.
The problem here is thousands of people coming here.
What criteria would people want for when somebody's name does go up and somebody's name doesn't go up?
It's a valid point. You can't just throw everybody's name out there.
Right. Right.
Sure.
But you also can't compare this to tax evasion or swindling or.
Like he
No, you
said,
can't.
too.
No.
You know what?
The rabbi said, it's a business issue. I can go to the police? No, you can't go to the police. It's a business issue. This isn't a business issue. It's different. You can't compare the two. Halachically, you can't compare.
And you're protecting the children from getting picked on, but you can save a life.
Up until, there are regulations about it. Up until, when there's a complaint made and it goes to the police, so at that point the police will tell me, again, that we should not publicize it. Why don't they want it publicized? Because it'll mess up their investigation. Right? They're busy investigating, so then you go, okay, investigation. Then...
How long does that take?
It can take a week, it can take 6 months. And then the case sort of disappears and pops up maybe a year later with a charge sheet or not. Right? And I'd say this case just last week with the charge sheet. So she's saying, much as she likes the publicity, it's good for her, right? The lawyer is cautioning that it may not be smart to mention names, right? Suggesting that maybe we'll say a guy who's aged 46 or whatever, right? From Ramat Beit Shemesh was charged with ABCD, but we should think very carefully whether it's a good idea to put his name down. She's saying that from within the legal system. There's a lot of squeamishness in Israel that maybe there isn't in the States, maybe because the States are so huge, right? And there's the impersonality of it, like Bessie was saying, that it's different to talk about the United States of America and to talk about Ramat Beit Shemesh Anglos. Right?
No, but even in England, Rav Padva and this other one, they had this TV station they went on, and you're talking about 50 million viewers watch this. And there's no disputing that, you know what it is? They're fishing out of the bank. That's it. People know this. In Ramat Beit Shemesh, go to Rabbi Malinowitz, ask him if there's a portfolio problem. He'll tell you there's no problem. Go to all these rabbis, they'll tell you there's no problem.
The Rosh Yir just got elected.
Moshe football, it doesn't happen.
He said
exactly
Moshe all the newspapers worldwide. He says there's no
benefit. There's no benefit, there's no gay people. That's what he said.
That's right. No gay and no pedophiles.
Just for those that didn't hear the full details of that story, I'm sure we all did. Our mayor said the famous thing when he said there are no homosexuals in Beit Shemesh. So he then, the next day, or a couple of days later, he fixed it. I heard it on the radio. And he said, when the guy said gays is an English word, right?
Right.
And he said, what do I know about English words? He thought gays meant pedophiles. Right? So hold on, let's just rerun that. Say there's no pedophiles in Beit Shemesh.
Dave, what's the update about the guy that is being prosecuted, the guy that was taking in kids at Barkol and in Yesh, and then on Shabbos, you know?
I just lost what happened with those cases. It disappears in the system. The victims are entitled to information. But the law says that they are entitled to know what happened in the case.
But isn't everything public information? I know every case in the States. I mean, the Jewish cases, you follow them every day.
No, it's not here. Here they don't do it.
We're linked in with various databases, which are incomplete, and it's very hard to track the cases. Even the victims are given a code word. They go into the government victims of crime site, and they plug it in, and that's supposed to give them updated information about where their case stands. But it's like two words, right? Mutupal, right? Or it's being dealt with, or it's bepraktikut, it's in the prosecution.
So there's a problem with the justice system.
The justice system is also a problem. The rabbi's spoken a lot about the problem in our communities, and he's right on every point. Right? But beyond that, another word is walked in, there's a problem with the legal system, which is that out of 100 cases, we last did like a benchmark of 100 cases that again has participated in, and looked at how many of those had gone to the police, and it was about 60% went to the police, which you could ask, well, how come 40% are being covered up? Well, they're not being covered up. It's just that the victim came forward, we knew of something, but it was not a case, right? There wasn't a victim and a perpetrator waiting to come, the victim when you come forward. So that's already down from 100 to 60, right? How many of those was an arrest made? You know, the police won't come and arrest anybody just on my say-so or your say-so, right? They need to have a certain level of evidence that justifies them going to drag somebody in and sticking him in a cell. Baruch Hashem, we live in a country where the rights of everybody is preserved, even if their case has been, the complaints have been lodged against them. So about half of them, there's no arrest, right? So now you're on half with arrest.
And then there's the rabbis that come in. By us, Baruch Hashem, we have the rabbis out of the court system. The rabbis here finagled the whole court system. Mandrovich was finagled by, I forgot his name. What? The Rebbe, but he sent somebody. See, this is such a big problem because the rabbis, for some reason, control the small. It's a small country with a lot of powerful rabbis, and they control the whole system. They can make things disappear. They can do anything they want.
No, but I'll give you an example. You're right.
So just to give you the bottom line. The bottom line is that if you look at the number of convictions as a proportion of the number of complaints, right, it's about 10%, 5%.
Of the 60 or the 100?
Of the 100. Right. So these are the people who are stepping forward, who are saying we want something done. It's a start. It's a start, and one of the things we want to do is to give proper counselling, legal counselling, so that people can present their case effectively and they don't mess up at that level. We all know the case of Nachlaot, where there's a huge, multiple perpetrator, hundreds of victims, allegedly, in Nachlaot. And one of the problems was that all the parents spoke to their kids in such a way as it corrupted the evidence. Right? So you can over-educate people, right, about how important it is to talk to your kids. And then the police say, oh, well, the evidence is now corrupted, there's nothing we can do with it. It's a tough problem, yeah.
So what I think that you're telling us is that we can't rely on Ruban, and we can't rely on the police.
There are things that are within your control, and there are things that are not within your control or influence. Right? And put those things aside. What is in your control and influence is you, your family, your school, your shul, right? Of introducing and implementing safety measures, right? That will, the way you talk to your kids, the way that we all talk to our kids, and to make sure that on the calendar, at least once every whatever period of time, 6 months, you sit down with your kids and say, I'd like to talk to you about personal safety, and to open up the discussion, and to make sure that there's the proper communications, that when something does happen to a kid, they feel they can confide in you, you're not going to go ballistic, you're not going to accuse them, you're going to, and to educate yourself about how to listen to your kids. Yeah? Here's the other equation. Talk about the equation of people who come forward with a complaint. What we're missing is this equation, right? Before that, is the number of kids who are abused and never tell anyone. We're talking about people who are 17, 18 years old who are now talking about what happened when they were kids. People go decades or never tell anyone. Right? That's the majority. That's the majority. Right? And then there's those that do tell an adult, probably their mum. Right? So there's this report from Haifa said the person they're most likely to speak to is their mum, or actually the most likely person is one of their friends. Kid will tell a friend. Kid will tell a kid, and then they might consider telling their mum. How many of those mums here? How many of them are listening, or dads? Right? When the kid says, I have a stomachache and I don't want to go to school today. Right? When they say that I don't want to go into carpool with Joe. Right? When they say I don't want to go for a sleepover at my friend's house. How many of them realize that we're being told that they're being molested in their school, that they've been molested in the car, that they've been molested on their sleepaway at their friend's house?
What do you say about that person who apparently has served his, what do you call it?
His time.
But he was convicted, now he's out. What do we do about him? Do you think we should be, I don't know, what can we do about it?
Well, personally, with my experience that I have from all these years, that tigers don't change their spots. We have found so many people who are in prison, they came out, they're molested again. We have people who go rotisserie. They go in for a few years, a year or two, they come back, they taste to the judge, listen, I'm sick. There's a guy that comes into court every time, and he puts down his pills. You know, they have these pills for these people, and he says, listen, Judge, I take him every day, religiously. What should I do? I messed up again. So he says, okay, 3 years will be fine this time. It goes around and around and around. It's not something that, you know, would stop, especially if he's been doing it for so many years. Nobody changes. A tiger does not change his spots. That means if he's born with spots in a certain way, when it becomes a big tiger, the spot is still in the same place. It's a problem. I respect the fact that they have these people who try to say, what do they call that?
Shirut HaMivchan.
Shirut HaMivchan, I understand, but I want to tell you something. You know how many people are in the streets who are not just molesters or murderers and everything, and the psychiatrists say no, blah, 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 and they give arguments, and at the end of the day, when they mess up, we suffer.
It's a balance. Who are dealing with it. There's the prison services. There's a thing called the Shirut HaMivchan, which is the social services of the legal system. Which is to say that if somebody is alleged to have done some of these things, then they have a proper assessment. Not an assessment that's done in 5 minutes, an assessment, a real rigorous assessment of their risk. And it's not true to say that all these guys will do it again, that none of them are curable, that they've done it once, they'll do it a million times, is simply factually not true. Right? There are different profiles of child sex offenders, and some of them respond very well to treatment. Some of them, you may as well throw the key away on the cell, because they're not going to get better. There's everything from, at one end of the spectrum, a guy who, having marital problems, he starts up with a teenage babysitter, and he's caught, whatever, right?
That's not a pedophile, that's statutory rape. I mean, it's...
Okay, we all understand that's different. And not good, it's very bad, right? The guy should have the rule book thrown at him, right?
You can't compare it, messing up a kid's life to,
A kid's life can a babysitter can also be a kid.
You're right.
What difference does it make?
No,
just because it's easier to get her because he's in the house.
You're right, that's the same thing.
It's a bad guy done a bad thing and he should be punished, right? But we all understand, none of us are psychologists, right? Maybe we are, but I'm not. But we all understand that's a different profile than the guy who you just described, who is coming out of prison after 25 years. All he wants to do is get his hand on some little kid in the park, right? It's different, right? And it's naive. Naive is not quite the right word. It's just ignorant to address them all as the same thing. And there is a system, okay, it's called a Shurta Mivchan, and they do rigorous assessments on people who are relationship about this stuff, and they will put them into treatment, and they will not let them out into the general public if they are felt to be a risk. Much the same way as somebody said about the States, where they have to be at a certain place at a certain time, they have to report in. There's a similar regime, parole officer, there's a similar regime here to try and safeguard the public. It does exist. It does exist. So it's true that there are convicted sex offenders in Ramat Beit Shemesh Aleph. It's true. However, it's not true to say that they're hefker and they're out there and they can tackle all our kids tomorrow and nobody's watching them. There is a system even for that is there to protect our safety.
Do you have an approximate number of how many there are in Ramat Beit Shemesh Aleph? 5, 10, 15, 20, 20?
More.
Do you know?
More.
I don't know, but I would guess 10.
And when you say convicted, there are...
We're trying to get the numbers up.
Yeah, but wait, you have to understand that when he's saying...
Which is why we are all mandatory reporters, because we're all the voice of the kids. We suspect a kid is being abused, that with the assumption of the law is the kid can't speak up for himself. Adults, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh, Al Tamod Al Dam Re'echa, right? The obligation is on all of us to speak up for this child. It came from a particular case in Tiberia about 20 years ago, where there was a little girl who was found dead, and when the police did their investigation, they found that she had been abused, physically abused for most of her life, and that many people knew about it, right? But nobody had thought it was their job to tell the authorities, right? So at that point they decided to extend the statute of limitations to what it is today. And today it's when the kid reaches 18, right, they now can speak up for themselves, right? They have 10 years until they're 28 in order to report abuse. However, if it's within the family or other people who are responsible for the child, probably a school will probably work the same as well, I'm not sure, then you have another 10 years. So you have 20 years from 18 until 38. If it's a stranger or a neighbor or whatever, then you have 10 years. But for cases where the assumption is there's more loyalty to the perpetrator, right? That's the relationship that there is because of a member of the family or whatever, then you have another 10 years to come through.
David, if you're saying about, because the law in Israel is that the perpetrators, the molesters, they have rights, and their names, even if they're prosecuted, even if they're convicted, they're not, you're not allowed to say their name later. What about perpetrators and convicted sex offenders that have moved from Chutzlaretz, America, like Mondrowitz, okay, living here, like nothing ever happened.
Okay, he was never convicted.
I know he was never convicted, but he's wanted there. He was even wanted by Charles Hines.
Right.
Okay, so What I'm asking is, the reason I'm asking is because there's what we can do, what we can't do.
Right.
So if you're saying Israeli laws to go after the Israeli guys that, they're trying to get our kids in Barkle, we can't do anything aside from just educating our kids, which is very important. But what about the ones that are coming to Ramat Beit Shemesh from America, from Muncie, this guy from Muncie that came now, and this other guy that came from, what's his name, Helbrins, the Michigan, right? We're allowed to mention those names are already out there.
Okay,
so why can't that be mentioned here?
We have publicized, I'm trying to remember, at least 2 cases, which is not many out of all. But one case was where there was a cluster of allegations, all of which were quite consistent in terms of the operating, whatever it's called, not operating system, that's computers, but the very good, modus operandi, right? And the age of the kids was clearly apparent. We encouraged them and helped them to come forward to the police. It was reported to the police. The guy was arrested. There was an investigation. In parallel to the police investigation, the alleged perpetrator was playing out. He went Meshuggah. Right? What does that mean? It means that he would go around, his taste was girls, young girls. He would go around the girls' schools and offer his speaking services. And his speaking services were to tell his inspirational life story, which really is very inspirational. Really. It's true. He has a story. This guy has a very compelling story. Very compelling story. And at the end of this compelling story, he would go around to all the girls and say, here's my card. If you have any problems, things you don't want to discuss with your parents, just give me a call and you can talk to me. Right? This is during the police investigation. Right? No pusher. This guy, this guy, a friend of his who didn't know about the allegations, calls him up and says, how are you doing, Jack? He says, doing fine, thank you. How are you doing? Oh, chit-chat, chit-chat, chit-chat. I've got a problem with one of my kids, one of my sons. I think maybe something might have happened to him. Right? Goes through this list of signs of child abuse, right? I think something may have happened. So this alleged perpetrator says, oh, good job you told me about it. I'm an expert on this stuff. I'll drive round to your house. I'll take your little kid into my car. Give me 3 or 4 hours, and I'll come back and I'll tell you exactly what happened to this boy. Wow, Weberman on. Listen to this. Listen to this. The guy says, I didn't know you're such an expert on this stuff. How do you know about it? He says, oh, I work for McGann. Wow. The perpetrator used our name. He says, I work for McGann. Right? And so there were other examples too. This guy was dangerous.
He was prosecuted?
This guy was prosecuted, yeah.
Convicted?
He has not been convicted yet.
So you can't even mention the name? Because he hasn't been convicted, even if he was convicted.
But hold on, wait for the story, So we went to the Rabbanim of his Kehillah. Right? Yes. In Ramat Beit Shemesh. There was a particular defined neighborhood where he lived and where he operated. And we got all those Rabbanim around a table together with our professionals who explained this guy is a risk to your community. Right?
He didn't let his son go in the car with him.
No, Chush, right? I said how important Chush is. Something told him something's not right about this, and he said, I'll get help elsewhere, thanks. Right. But we got the professionals to explain to the Rabbanim why this is such dangerous behavior, right? And that Shabbat, we took weeks of roundtable discussions till late at night, and Baruch Hashem, all the Rabbanim in that Kehillah were very, very cooperative, and they were all on board. And one Friday night, they all got up in their shuls, and they said about child protection, child abuse in general, and they said that there's a specific risk in our neighborhood, and anybody who wants to know the identity should come and talk to me after shul. And by the end of that Shabbos, everybody knew who the guy was. And he kept a low profile from then onwards.
Is he still around?
He's around, but he keeps a low profile, and that's fine. You know,
That's fine. That's not fine.
The
That's not fine. Because you know what? You're right. That Kihilo knows him 2 blocks
These
later.
people don't
he's gonna
stop.
walk
They
up
don't
on
stop.
Shabbos. So he's gonna
They just find their next
He's gonna come
victim.
over here over Shabbos.
If you want to know about whether they stop or not, I read a story in the newspaper. It was a beautiful story that somebody was sitting in jail for 25 years because he molested children. When he finished his 25-year term, a year before, the government said to psychiatrists they should go, to get him to the real world. I mean, the 25 years, he had a hotel for free, he had food for free, everything, but he has to start in the real world. So the psychiatrist says to him, what's your imagination when you go out from this jail? He says, my imagination is that I should be in the park at dusk when it gets dark, and there should be a lot of trees over there, and there should be one small child there, and I would pull down his pants and I would molest him. This is in the newspaper. So he runs to the judge and he says, listen, I'm a professional psychiatrist, the prison hired me to get him to reality, this is where we're up to. So the judge says, he served his time, he's going to go out. If he messes up again, he'll be back. It took the same afternoon when he went out, he was back. That was in the newspaper.
They didn't do it to the first time.
What?
They sacrificed that little child.
You should appreciate that these are not new issues, and they're much bigger. By no way, he said he has a problem. And how many parents are tuned in and educated enough to pick up on it and be supportive? The number of parents who pull us up and say, the kid said something, and they said, you can't be telling the truth. How can you say such a thing? Right? And basically that's the end of the discussion as far as the kid's concerned. Right? Unless they're told, thank you for telling me, is the first thing the parent says. Right? I know this is difficult for you. Thank you so much for telling me. Right? And it doesn't matter if it's about a maths test that they were caught cheating on. Thank you for telling me that you cheated on the maths test. Right? As opposed to going ballistic and self-righteous. And I've always told you not to cheat. Right? I've always told you to be honest. What kind of behavior is that? The teacher was quite right to kick you out of the class. Right? Forget it. No, the most important thing is to say thank you. Thank you for confiding. Right? And most of us fail at that point, which is why the kid isn't heard. Those kids that are courageous enough to say are generally not heard. And then there's those who are heard, and what the parent doesn't know what to do, which is why they come to us. Right? You have all your
No. I want you can read it off. You can read it off. And I also, when you finish...
I think your stage here.
No. And when you finish the reading, these are the 4 things that you have to avoid. This is tips for talking to the child. Please read it off. First this, and then those 10 points.
There's a lot here. I just think
No, just this one. These 4.
These 4, okay. Tips, thank you. Tips for talking to an abused child. Avoid denial and remain calm. Common reaction to news as unpleasant as shocking as child abuse is denial. However, if you display denial to a child or show shock or disgust at what they are saying, the child may be afraid to continue and will shut down. That's exactly what I was saying.
And then I'm going to give everybody this.
Very good. As hard as it may be, remain calm and as reassuring as you can. Number 2. There's only 4 of them. Number 2, don't interrogate. Let the child explain to you in his or her own words what happened. This is exactly the problem at Nachlaot. Very good. It's the problem that all the parents became amateur investigators and Sherlock Holmeses, and that messed up the testimony. Don't interrogate. Let the child explain to you in his or her own words what happened, but don't interrogate the child or ask leading questions. He touched you where? Then did he touch you on your... Right? No. You're leading the child along. This may confuse and fluster the child and make it harder to continue their story. Let them say what's on their mind. Number 3, reassure the child that they did nothing wrong. The reason that most kids never tell is because they feel guilty. They feel they did something wrong. So reassure the child that there's nothing wrong. It takes a lot for a child to come forward about abuse. Reassure him or her that you take what is said seriously and that it is not the child's fault. Number 4, safety comes first. If you feel that your safety or the safety of the child will be threatened if you try to intervene, leave it to the professionals. You may be able to provide more support later after the initial professional intervention. As you say, call
These are the 4 very good. I will leave it away. I also took this out from a few books.
Okay. Excellent. This is excellent material. 10 signs of child abuse. Okay, we'll quickly run through them. 1. Unexplained injuries. Visible signs of physical abuse may include unexplained burns or bruises in the shape of objects. You may also hear unconvincing explanations of a child's injuries. So this is typically for physical abuse, where I once went to a lecture by a doctor in Hadassah in Karen, who's responsible for the emergency ward for kids. He worked in a hospital in America, where they had on average, I think it was like 3 a week, of these kind of unexplained injuries, which they put as suspected child abuse, SCA. SCA was sort of scribbled on the guy's file, the kid's file, that had to be investigated. 3 a week. He came to Hadassah in Karen in Jerusalem, same position, and he's looking. 6 months he's been there, 9 months he's been there, a year he's been there, and he's never had a single SCA. Again, either we live in Gan Eden and nobody physically abuses their children here, or they're not spotting the signs of abuse, right? And so he educated the whole staff at Hadassah and Karen child emergency ward how to spot these signs, and suddenly the numbers started to go up until they were comparable with the hospital he was working in the States. Changes in behavior, number 2. This is okay. Abuse can lead to many changes in a child's behavior. Abused children often appear scared, anxious, depressed, withdrawn, or more aggressive. In other words, we all need to be listening out for not just what our kid says, but also the way they are behaving. And if their behavior changes in a way that is noticeable, dramatic, consistent, then you should be inquiring. Okay, so let's get to run through them because it's very late. Returning to earlier behaviours. I see the regressive behaviour. Thumb sucking, bed wetting, when there's no fear of the dark, fear of strangers, loss of some language, memory problems. These will happen also. Fear of going home. Abused children may express apprehension or anxiety about leaving school or about going places with the person who's abusing them. That's what I was saying about I don't want to get in the car with Joe. Right? Changes in eating. A lot of kids who are victims of abuse, even adults who are playing out. Some of these signs, by the way, don't appear for 10 years, 20 years. Right? So a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-old girls with eating disorders, when you replay how do they get there, so it could have been that 10 years previously they were sexually abused, and it's now playing out. Changes in sleeping. Abused children may have frequent nightmares or have difficulty getting sleep, and as a result may appear tired or fatigued. Changes in school performance and attendance. Personal lack of care, personal care or hygiene. Abused and neglected children may appear uncared for. They may present as consistently dirty and have severe body odor, or they may lack sufficient clothing for the weather. I think this is more talking about neglect, which is another form of abuse. Neglect is basically when people who are responsible for the child don't provide them with basic physical needs. They don't provide them with proper food, with shelter, with clothing, with cleanliness. Risk-taking behaviours. Young people who are being abused may engage in high-risk activities, such as using drugs or alcohol or carrying a weapon. Inappropriate sexual behaviours. Children who have been sexually abused may exhibit overly sexualized behavior or use explicit sexual language. Some signs that a child is experiencing violence or abuse are more obvious than others. Trust your instincts. That's a very important point. The parents call us up and they say that I think something's wrong with my kid, but I've spoken to the school and the yoetzet and they think that the kid is fine, but I feel otherwise. So our usual advice is listen to yourself. The chush of a parent, the instinct of a parent is very strong. And if they suspect something is wrong, there's probably some good reason for their suspicions. Trust your instincts. Suspected abuse is enough of a reason to contact the authorities. You do not need proof. In fact, the law in Israel is that we are all mandatory reporters, right? As opposed to the States. In the States, I think it's just professionals, teachers, therapists, doctors, right, are obligated to report. Here, every single person in this room is a mandatory reporter, which is to say that if you fail to report a suspicion of child abuse to the authorities, you have committed a crime. Right? A crime that is punishable with 3 to 6 months in prison. Right? So when this particular Rav sent me off to Rav Shefanovich, right, he was making me break the law. Right? He was making the parents break the law. He himself was breaking the law.
So why then he's not being prosecuted?
He's a Rav local, right?
Yeah.
So why does he I mean, it's like, for someone to be told to not go to the police, isn't that that you could be prosecuted?
You could be.
Did you go back to him and explain that to him?
Yeah. No, I told him at the time. I said, tell me what it's going.
Now it's happening in the States, and it's happening here also. We have what they call lawsuits. Yeshiva University has $1 million lawsuits and so forth. Now that the rabbis are seeing that their power is crumbling, now they're all afraid. When you start up, you say, what should I do? He says, leave me out, you didn't ask me. Our movlings, they say, don't go, don't go. The same is going to happen here. Watch when the lawsuit starts piling up against these rabbis.
Yeah, what the rabbi did do, giving credit, he did respond. He responded by banning Lamanachai from fundraising in his shul.
Oh, so why did you go? You're supposed to be a mandatory reporter. Why did you go to Safranovich altogether?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I'll tell you why. Very good question. So why did I listen to this rabbi? Okay. Very good. Okay, Shkar. So let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. I have my rabbi. My rabbi is by the book. Go by the law. Go by what's professionally right. And my rabbi was abroad and was uncontactable for the purposes of this. So I went to this other rabbi who had a kesher to the family. And the reason I needed his stempel, right, his ishur, his heter, to go to the police, wasn't for me. It was for the family.
Victim?
It's for the victim's family. That when they get called Moiser, Motzi Shemra, Rechilus, right, that they can say, no, Rabbi so-and-so said this is what we had to do. That was the value of it. At the end of the day, just cut the story short, so the Rav Shefanovich said he did a handwriting test on the perpetrator, and he invited the alleged perpetrator in for a lie detector test, and he didn't show. Right? The alleged perpetrator didn't show, and so he said he's done all he can. Like either drop it or go to the police. So I went back to the Rav. I said, okay, this is what he says. I said, what I need is your green light, please, to go to the police. He says, well, I can't. And so I said, okay, and I'm going to give you 3 choices. Give me a green light, which says it's a chiyuv to go to the police. Give me a red light that says it's osa. Or give me an orange light that says I should do according to my own judgment. Right? It says orange.
That's safe one, yeah.
And then they pay Lamanachai.
And the orange light meant that he didn't have to take any responsibility,
Mhm.
right? And it was what I wanted him for in the first place, to protect the family, so the family could say that my Rav said that we could do it, right? He jumped off and said, no thanks, he's not going to take
Why would
responsibility.
someone do that? Why?
Because there's a problem in Israel. In America, this was the problem that was spoke about. 20 years ago, it was the same here. We're 20 years behind. So the rabbis here think that they're the buckies. They know Gemara Baal Peh, and they know pedophiles Baal Peh, and they know, Hilchas Mammon and Dinei Mamnas, and they don't know. They're steiging all day, and they don't know.
There's a big rabbi in Israel that found out that they molested in his yeshiva a boy, and he's from the States, and he's opening up now a lawsuit for a few $1 million. So I'm here now, the rabbi's gabbai calls me up, I should come over right away, the rabbi wants to sit down and talk to me. I said, first of all, I want to know what, subject he wants to talk to me. Does he want to talk Hilchas Mikvahs or something else? He says, no, he wants to talk about this lawsuits, pedophiles. I said, listen, Rabbi, I'm in Cherem, I'm in ostracization, you're not supposed to talk to me. And I hung up the phone. They're going to start feeling it here very bad. All these noshrim that go off the derech, they're going to come back and start suing these yeshivas.
Why didn't you want to talk? Why didn't you want to talk?
Because what he wanted to use me is my knowledge to find out how strong he is, how he can change now, saying Keili, Yeshiva University has $1 billion lawsuits. So the boy said, we came to Rabbi Norman Lam and we told him.
Right.
So now Rabbi Norman Lam is like 83 or 84 and is not fully functional. So they were trying to say that because he can't stand on a stand, that's why that the boys should not be listened to. So the judge says, no, I'll send him to my own doctor. And the doctor says he's fully understandable. He knows. That's $1 billion. You know what $1 billion means? Their value is $1,200,000,000, and they're going to lose it all. And now they're trying to settle now for smaller monies, and they're all going to do it. Penn State University.
The same thing.
Penn State University. You heard what they had to pay? $60 million for these
And they covered it
children.
up.
Saltman is going to get a lawsuit very soon from this girl that was molested from the age of 12 till 16. They're waiting for a $20 million lawsuit. Where are they going to get?
Weberman.
Where are they going to get all that money for? And another thing, I speak to a lot of Gevirim who give money for Yeshiva University. They say, if the Yeshiva has a lawsuit, we stop giving money. We thought that our money, hard-earned money, is going for chinuch, for Torah. If it's going to, protect pedophiles or to help out, no way. They're going to stop. So this is going to come now to Israel also. It just takes time. Give it time.
Listen, these two rabbis are in Israel right now. Macy Gordon and Finkelstein.
That's right.
They're here in Israel.
They're here in Israel. That's right.
Can I just say, is our big priority now to get people like David and anyone, like to go into every single school and talk to kids.
That is the biggest priority, but the main thing is every mother should start talking to the children.
Yeah, for sure.
Once you start talking, this. No, but you see,
parents.
if a child is immune and he knows what his private parts is and he knows that the mother told him nobody's allowed to touch you and not to start, awareness, the past 5 years, what I was doing on my hotline is just awareness. That's all. The rest only started the past 2 years. Before that, there was just awareness and denial and awareness and denial. But every mother sat down with the children. First of all, you speak to them, and you say once in 6 months, I say once a week. You should speak to the child and ask him, after you speak to him every 2 days, you should ask him, but by the way, is anybody bothering you? Is anybody touching you inappropriately? And you would see the answers. You would be flabbergasted to see how these children start to speak. Yes, mommy, this guy and that guy and the guy that sits next to us in shul. And it's unbelievable when these children start to talk. The Egyptians, they wanted to know where the Jewish children are. They took Egyptian children and they were crying. And as soon as they were crying, the Jewish children heard the baby cry. They also started to cry. That's how they knew that where the Jewish children are hiding. You would be surprised. I myself am shocked. Sometimes the mother says, but by the way, Chaim, is anybody touching you inappropriately in the private place? He says, yes, mommy, this guy, that guy. The list goes on and on and on. So our main thing is what we call awareness.
But we've got to get other parents to be aware as well, and saying, we're here.
That's what I'm saying. You see, I teach in the States, and I think the New York Public Library has for free to rent, you know, every library has an auditorium, and you can rent it. And I say that the women get together for so many different things. You get together for teaching Hilchas Nida, you get together for teaching Hilchas Chala. Get together once a month, teach about child protection, child safety. You'll be surprised how many women come. I take the library, I say I'll probably have 70 people. At the end of the day, there's an officer there that stops the people from coming in.
What about, I mean, this is probably for both of you. What about starting something like a radio show like Dov Hikind? Dov Hikind was instrumental in bringing down
That's right.
hundreds of
Dov
pedophiles.
Hikind helped us out very much. If it wasn't for him, when I kept on saying there's child molesting going on, everybody said it's a lie, it's a lie. All of a sudden, Dov Hikind opened his office and he says every person that was molested should come in. In less than 2 weeks, he had 400 cases.
Right.
With names. People were not ashamed anymore. And then he goes out and he calls all the television stations, all the newspapers for a meeting in front of his office. And I was there. And he says, if you think that there's no child molesting in the community, in 2 weeks, 400 cases. And I stopped. I don't even want to go further. Most of them, you can't even sue them or do anything because it's past statute of limitation. So there's a problem. So he said, I stopped, but I want you to know it's happening. Sure it has to be. I spoke on this week on Arutz Alpine. You heard of Arutz Alpine? It's like a Fruma station. 5 years I've been begging him to talk about child molestation. He says, no, you speak about mikvahs. I said to him this time, it's either child molestation or I don't speak at all. You would be surprised. I put on, I started talking about child molestation and what's going on. And I read one of these things that if you see this on your child, all of a sudden in the middle, you're not supposed to block it, somebody in the middle of talking, somebody calls in a woman, oh, this is exactly what's happening to my child, what should I do? I said, you can hear on the recording, I said, go take him out from school and go to a doctor now. 10 minutes later, another woman calls in, I see the fifth symptom of my child. Of course, you need radio stations to accept you, you need radio stations, I mean, they got, you shouldn't hear the end of what they got after that. People called up, if you ever let this man up again, we will stop our haraot keva. It's like a private thing. And then the guy says, listen, I don't care, stop your haraot keva. I need to address this problem.
Why is there a statute of limitations on raping a child?
Well, let's put it this way. Until now, the statute of limitations is until the 23rd birthday. We're working to make it higher. In Israel, they succeeded from the 18th birthday to the 38th birthday. And in the States, we're still working on. Now, the reason why we didn't compromise yet is because some people say it should take forever. So other people say when a person becomes 60, 70, he doesn't remember that clear, and the defendant has to be able to defend himself, and so forth and so on. So now we're working on a compromise deal 54. If it'll go through, Be'ezras Hashem, then we'll be happy. Because we claim to the authorities that somebody by 23, he doesn't even know the damage that they did to him. He doesn't even figure it out yet. It's only before he got a job, and it's only before he's supposed to get married. So they're listening to us, and they're trying to work with us. So eventually we're going to pull it out. Some places, like in England, the rape is just like murder. There is no statute of limitation. You can be 70, you can get somebody to court. So it's
this is what it is here. Just to explain. There's the clocks. The assumption is that the child does not have.
What do you say about that kind of person who apparently has served his, what do you call it?
His time.
But he was convicted, now he's out. What do we do about him? Do you think we should be, I don't know, what can we do about it?
Well, personally, with my experience that I have from all these years, that tigers don't change their spots. We have found so many people who are in prison, they came out, they're molested again. We have people who go rotisserie. They go in for a few years, a year or two, they come back, they say to the judge, listen, I'm sick. There's a guy that comes into court every time, and he puts down his pills. You know, they have these pills for these people. And he says, listen, Judge, I take him every day religiously. What should I do? I messed up again. So he says, okay, 3 years will be fine this time. It goes around and around and around. It's not something that, would stop, especially if he's been doing it for so many years. Nobody changes. A tiger does not change his spots. That means if he's born in spots in a certain way, when it becomes a big tiger, the spot is still in the same place. It's a problem. I respect the fact that they have these people who try to say, what do they call that?
Shirut HaMivchan.
Shirut HaMivchan, I understand, but I want to tell you something. You know how many people are in the streets who are not just molesters or murderers and everything, and the psychiatrists say no, blah, 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 and they give arguments, and at the end of the day, when they mess up, we suffer.
It's a balance. They say in the times of the Sanhedrin, the Rabbi will correct me, the times of the Sanhedrin, that if they convicted somebody once every 70 years, whatever.
They killed
someone.
But here it's different. You see, I claim to all these people, they say, what's Mesira? So basically, you don't have idas and you need to see Kemachel B'Sheferes. I tell them, listen, all we're doing is we're giving them a happy and healthy place to live with no expenses of paying bills. You get your 3 meals a day. So we're not killing him. We're giving him kosher meals and everything. But one thing we're doing, we're keeping him off the street because he's a danger to society. Okay. We're not killing him.
So in terms of the killing, we think of it as a great midah. It's a great midah where Rachmanim, B'nai Rachmanim, right? And Sanhedrin, if they killed one person in 70 years, it was a bloodthirsty Sanhedrin, and we say, bravo, right? What we don't say is, oh my goodness, how many murderers they must have had wandering the streets of Jerusalem in the times of the Sanhedrin.
Well, you can see it in Eichel. You see it in Eichel.
Okay.
And they were killing people for no reason.
Right. So it's a balance. It's a balance between balance. And we have to decide in a society where we want to be on that balance.
Maybe you should
safety and freedom.
What about Rabbi, you know,
no, maybe you should conclude. It's going to be.
The Mishmar Tznius, when they see a woman that she has, sleeves up to here and not up to here, not up to here, so they go after with a baseball bat. So the Mishmar Tznius, when it comes to children, they don't protect the children, or they do?
I found out that Mishmeres Tznius is the front runner for the rabbis to extort the money. They really do nothing. Before you said Safranovich, I asked you if it's Safranovich. I begged him that he should help me out with this gay bet in Jerusalem by Zhuknik. And he told me the gay bet is in the building of the Eidach Riders. They get the revenue. With them I can't start because they give me a stamp that I can go collecting money. So I knew already where we're up to. In Williamsburg, Mishmeres Tznius would extort hundreds and thousands of dollars. And if you didn't give him, they would say, I would go to Mr. Charles Hines. And I said, wait a minute, how can you threaten him to go to Charles Hines? It's the Chamoiser. So now there's going to be a famous case coming up. Mr. Kellner, we hope that a lot of these people are going to be on stand. Can you imagine? He comes over and he says, my child was molested. So the guy says to him, wait a few minutes, and then he sends him out, and he says the victim should stay here, and then he says, how about $100,000? Would you take it? He says, no way. This is what used to happen. They had money. We have what they call a financial cliff, in the States. If President Obama wants to climb out the financial cliff, he should come to the Orthodox people. They have more money in their possession than the United States government has at Fort Knox gold. And I want to tell you something. You can imagine Leibowitz, so far he's paid for lawyers and for reappeals and everything. They're up to about $5-6 million. And it's all paid up because this big lawyer of his, Al Dershowitz, doesn't take credit cards. He takes everything on the table. And they're up to about $5-6 million. And hopefully now he's going to go back to where he belongs. There's so much money. This guy, his name is Weberman, molested a child, an innocent child, from 12 till 16. He's a gynecologist, a psychologist, I don't know what he played. And they trusted him in his own apartment, not where his wife lives. He had an own apartment to talk to girls. And he did the most...
Tznius class.
Yeah. No, because she always didn't understand why we need to close the top button. What's wrong if it's a little open? So for these things, they said, we throw you out of school if you don't go for help. So he goes to Weberman, and unfortunately what he did, we know he got 103 years. They gave him a discount. He shouldn't be appealed. They gave him 50 years off. So now he's going to sit 50 years. He's a good government. So anyway, so the man got 50 years, right, or 103 years. Can you imagine what they did in order to pay for his defense? They rented the nicest wedding hall in Williamsburg called the...
Terrace High.
No, nicer one than that. Continental it's called, on Rutledge Street. And everybody was coming with the money. They couldn't count the money as fast as they came in. And I called the televisions, they should come, because we were protesting outside. We had a serious protest of 100 people are off the derech. And the newspapers, the cameras, the televisions have to take both sides. So they listened to us, and then they went in there. And we didn't believe they were going like this with the cameras. There were $100 bills rolling all over the place. You needed that. You saw them there?
No, but I've been, they have
You
refrigerator boxes full of hundreds.
You needed a broom to
hundreds
sweep
and
the money.
hundreds and hundreds.
You needed a broom to
No
sweep
idea.
the money. For what? What are you doing here? You're taking a person that is an accused pedophile that molested a girl. And he's not the only one. There's a rabbi that helps us out very much. His name is Rabbi Horowitz. He has the what?
Yankee Horowitz.
Yankee.
Yes.
What's the name of his organization?
Yes.
Yes, Project Yes. He told me, and he said it publicly, it's on his website, that he has another 6 victims that told him the same thing. As there were girls growing up in Beis Ruchel school, they were molested. And then Mr. Charles Heinz came out in the newspaper that he has 7 victims. So I wanted to see if it's totally 13 victims or the 6 and the 7 are the same. So we picked out all the names, and guess what? They were not the same, not one name. So we're talking about 13 women who are married, and some of them have big children already, had to eat this all day and all night, that they went to school, and they were supposed to be taught tznias, and they sent them to an unlicensed gynecologist, psychologist, or whatever, and what he did with them, I would not want to repeat in public. I was in court, what the girl was saying, whew, I had to walk out. I had to walk out. It was getting me to listen to what he did, such horrific things. And this went on for years. He was also Mishmeres HaTznius. And if you didn't pay him, or you didn't go to him, then they would throw you out of school. And who pays for the schools? The government. You know, every school in the United States, every school would close down if it wasn't for the help of the government. Lunch programs, this program, that program, they're pouring in hundreds of millions of dollars to the Yiddish chinuch, which is very good for us. But they're the big boys. And here comes a few people, and they run the show, and they say to the girl, if you don't go to him, then this and this is going to happen. We're going to throw you out, or whatever the punishments may be. So this is, Mishmeres HaTznius is the front runner for the rabbis. They share the profit with the rabbis.
So basically what you're saying is, it's like sort of the mafia, or the Goodfellas.
And that's what, when I started my speech today, I called them mafia. I called them the people who... Cartel. That's the mafia cartel. These are these people. And until now they got away with it. And somehow came up one crazy man. And that's myself, Rabbi Rosenberg. And I said, we're going to put a stop to this. I don't care if I was shot. It was a bullet. It came flying. And then they all poured bleach. After Weberman was, he got his... and then they put bleach in my eyes. I was blind for 1.5 days until, thank God, they had an ambrosia. They call it retin ambrosia. And it had to grow back. Wow. You know, imagine what they did.
Chayes.
Chayes. Chayes is an understatement. Yes.
Advice on play dates.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, advice please on play dates, for play dates.
The children, other
Kids
children
will play as well.
Can you give some advice? I have parents that call me that have never met me, and they say, my daughter would like to play with your daughter, And I always have them come to my house first, because I don't even recognize the name from the class. And so they come to, and they'll send them to my house, they don't even know what I live. I don't do that, but I do send my kids on play dates, and I don't know the families well, and I don't know how many brothers are in the house, and if the father is home, and, you know, my husband works at home, and play dates are in, girls are in it, and boys, girls.
Right, this is very serious. I mean, let's put it this way. Even if you know who they are, you see, the thing is, Hashem made an elephant with a long nose, 2 big ears. I mean, every child from 6 years old can tell you it's an elephant. But what he didn't do is, he didn't make the pedophiles with such a long nose or some obvious way that we can identify them. So they can be the nicest people. In fact, they can be the loveliest people and the nicest people. Now, if you send them over to the house, you don't know. Maybe the brothers and everything, you know, our brothers can start, you know, a whole story. I personally, I would not let my children go on such things. I respect the fact that you call them to your house, that would be fine, but when they have to go back, and then it probably goes afterwards with sleepovers and other things, and before you know it, you could be into a lot of problems.
So you're saying you wouldn't send...
By all means, never. I keep on my hotline, I keep on saying before Hanukkah, I said in English and in Hebrew and in Yiddish. Hanukkah is where we all go visit. Now, here it's close, you know, because Israel is very close. But people come from Chicago, they come from different places, and then they sleep over by brother-in-laws, by sister-in-laws, by sisters and everything. They have these big houses, they get a little drunk, and what's happening upstairs or in the basement while you're playing dreidelig, you don't know. It's the most dangerous thing, even by first cousins. It's very, very dangerous. And by all means, we live in a jungle. We have to face reality. We live in a jungle. I don't think there has ever been such a jungle like we live in now. And the reason why we can, the pedophiles can keep on what they're doing is because they have the rabbinical protection, the rabbinical guidance. And that's why we have to know we live in a jungle. When you go into a jungle, you obviously watch more over your children than when you're in the city. Don't misunderstand and don't mislead yourself. You are in a jungle.
So you're, okay, so forget the sleepovers. What about just playing after school at someone's house?
Is here again, you have to ask your children. First of all, you have to explain to them what the danger is. And then you have to ask them, by the way, are her brothers there? Is this guy there? Is the father there? Does he talk to you nice? Does he try to, you know, get into your system? These are all the things you have to be aware on top of everything.
You also get these kids who are sensitive, like, if you're talking to your kids like that and your kids are sensitive, they might become scared of everything else.
Well, you have to know how to do it. That's why I believe in here. You have to know how to talk.
Can you put up pictures
I would like that everybody should get a few, and I'm leaving over some extras for the people who couldn't stay so long. This is the 10 signs of abuse, which is very important. And also, I had somebody, I don't even know who did it, but they also translated it in Hebrew. I have it in the Hebrew translation. So everybody can take one, you can give a friend one, you can also make copies of it.
Put it up in the schools.
You can do that. Everybody should start with it. And now there's another thing that I want everybody to take. This is something that I collected from different places, and it's tips for talking to an abused child. God forbid, if anything goes wrong, you have to know how to talk to your child.
Dave, what about opening a website like they have, you know, what's that, David? Shmario Rosenberg?
Yeah.
What is it called? I don't know what's that.
A failed Messiah.
Failed Messiah.
Yeah, that guy.
But he puts up all the pictures and he doesn't get sued.
And he gets huge readership.
Somehow he doesn't get sued.
Now, I want to tell something to anybody that stays here. This is a book which has all the Hetayrim from the Rabbanim. I will leave you one, and anybody that needs it, you should be able to, you know, make copies of this.
Make a PDF.
You should make a PDF file. Whatever you want, you can do with this. And this is very important, and this is also a lot of Lubavitcher. The Crown Heights Bezin were the first Bezin who gave me a letter that it's not Masira, and I thank him. He was an old guy, 85 years old. And I said, listen, what's going on in the community is unbelievable. So he says, what's going on? I said, Mishkav Zocher. So he says, and what is that? I said, wait a minute, you're a boy seeker, you're 85 years old, you don't know what that is? He says, no. So they called in this young guy here. There's a guy, Rabbi Brown. He was in Australia. And if you know what's happening in Australia now with Manny Wax and everything, Australia is on fire for Chabad Shlichim in jail. So he knew what's going on. He says, yeah, it's the same going on in Crown Heights. I said, yeah, listen, this is the boy here. And he's the guy that made the website. And he claims he was molested by 3 Rabbi. So right away he gave his signature, and it's unbelievable. Peace to Rabbi Shway, Rabbi Brown. And because of that, Lubavitch is very, very cooperative.
For sure.
Yep. So this is what I want to leave to, anybody that wants this, but if anybody wants copies, no, it's not this I have enough copies.
Just make it into a PDF, and then we can make it.
Oh, very good. So do it the way you want. Do it the professional way.
Rabbi, what's the story with Rabbi Eiscrown?
Who?
Eiscrown.
Yeah,
You make it into a PDF.
Eiscrown.
Eiscrown?
I'll make it into a PDF.
Baltimore.
I'll make it into a PDF.
I didn't hear about it. That's what I'm saying. I don't need
David knows all about it. Eiscrown. Rabbi Eiscrown. He doesn't know
I'm
about it.
saying, he's a friend of mine. He was the first one that let us talk.
Rabbi Eiscrown got it from Rabbi Heinemann. The cancer of Heinemann?
No.
As Rabbi Heinemann so he's a tzaddik. He's a tzaddik.
So maybe what? Thank you. Now,
I'll send it to you. You can pass out to everybody else, and we'll give you the physical copy back.
I also, listen, if you're going to make